Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
Open your face, Molly joked with some irritation. Her husband, as usual, had shut himself off from the world with a fresh newspaper at breakfast. Yeah. Christian mumbled from his hiding place, rustled the page. Now I'll see how the crime is doing. And the man was silent in amazement, then turned the newspaper towards his wife. Come and see what kind of face is here. When did you become so famous? Molly took the newspaper, looked at the portrait of the woman, and raised her eyebrows. The image was indeed very much like her. She read at the bottom, suspected of murder, committed to a mental institution. Yes, they say everyone in the world has at least one doppelganger, but why is mine not a beauty queen, but a crazed murderer? She said indignantly. No, but what is the resemblance? Maybe you have a sister? The husband continued to wonder. You know very well I have no sisters. Molly cut him off. It's just a resemblance, the angle. And in general in these newspapers, the pictures are such that you do not recognize yourself. Eat up. It's getting cold. Camille didn't want to be admitted to the rural hospital, even though she came just before the birth. Who are you? Where did you come from? Do you have an exchange card? They asked her sternly. Nothing, it hurts a lot. I'll give birth now. Camille held on to her big belly, squirming in pain. How far along are you? Have you had any tests? The midwife looked at her and saw that the hem of her dress was wet. When did the water break? Not long ago. I didn't take anything while I was coming. I don't remember the due date. It's early, I suppose, but I can't. Ouch! The girl moaned. What an idiot, country girl. All right, let's put her on the table. Or she'll really give birth under the door. There's a multiple birth, it seems. Have you even seen a doctor? But Camille couldn't answer. She was so sick. Not an hour later, her daughters were born, 2 twin girls, but the woman did not recognize it. Immediately after the birth, she fell into unconsciousness and soon died. Yeah, that's a hell of a blow. Any paperwork? It is necessary to inform somewhere, relatives, or whoever. The head doctor sighed unhappily. So maybe we should bury her as a stray, and that's fine, suggested an elderly lady paramedic. Or they will come with their claims and blame us for everything. And what about the children? Say that you gave birth to them. The doctor was indignant. Or you also ordered to give them away somewhere. I wonder at you. Are you a doctor or what? Like or not, but her relatives will come and tell us who we are. They'll drag us to court. Well, I've got a passport and a phone number for a Michael. Let's notify both. Let whoever wants to bury them. Take their kids, Michael or whoever. Camille didn't really want to go from her native village to the city. That is, she didn't know. She wanted to see the light, but she was afraid. And where would she go? There were classmates who had already left, who were studying. Someone had relatives. They promised to arrange a place for her. But she, Camille, did not succeed in her studies. She was glad to get out of school at least, but she did not want to think about studying somewhere else. She had no relatives either. Besides, her mother Clara did not really want to let her only daughter, young and pretty, go anywhere. There were such stories in their village that girls left and then came back as women, unmarried, but with children. And she was not very optimistic about the intelligence and cleverness of her Camille. She was not stupid, of course, but she was too trusting, too simple-minded, so she was the only one to disappear in the city. But then her neighbor Olivia persuaded her. Olivia had such a tongue that she could talk to anyone, and here she came and started a song. I found a place for your Camille in town, a place that's a godsend. But wait a minute, don't wave your arms around, just listen, and then think about what you're doing to spoil a girl's life. She'll go to the farm, that's a great blessing. There's enough people there now, they want to make her a shepherdess. She'll be a shepherdess, what's the big deal? I guess that's our fate, and what's the joy in this town? She'll be lost there. It will be lost here, I tell you. And you listen, what a place. I'd be the first to talk you out of going to a factory. It's not for girls, of course, to hang around in dormitories where everyone's in a heap, men and girls alike. But what I'm offering you is a housekeeper in a good family. What else? A housekeeper. Clara hesitated. And what do we all live as? Not servants? And in the city, what's not to live? And the water from the tap is hot at once, and gas in the kitchen, and the family is rich. I tell you, husband and wife, no children, it's already good. To live in a nice apartment is the same as them. The owner himself is in some kind of trade position, so they eat things we haven't seen in the movies. How do you know that? Camille's mother was surprised. From my sister's Barbara, her daughter Lisa, I lived with them for 3 years and never knew any grief. She became a city girl and found a good husband. She's a city girl now, so they're looking for a new one. Barbara told me to find a girl who's quiet and neat. Well, who else but your Camille? That's true, but I'm still afraid. Well, be afraid, be afraid. A place like this will be snatched away, and you're breaking down. Ask the girl what she wants. To spend her life twisting cows' tails, or to live like a human being for a while. Where is she? She's in the vegetable garden, tending tomatoes. That's a nice thing to do, in the garden, in manure, that's how she spends her life. In a year or two, she'll turn into a hunchbacked aunt with black hands, and all because of your fear. Shout to her, we'll ask her ourselves. Her mother called Camille from the vegetable garden, and she realized at once that the matter was serious. She quickly rinsed her hands, took off her muddy boots, and came in. Good afternoon, Aunt Olivia. Listen, daughter, what does Olivia offer us here? Olivia had already told Camille everything, and so colorfully, with such details that the girl's eyes lit up, though she did not dare to agree at once, looking at her mother, what she would say. And she looked at her beauty, at her hands, really with black broken nails, at her feet, soiled with nettles. Olivia was right. Why should she ruin her girlhood, her golden years in the village? Let her live in the city at least for a while, and Clara made up her mind. You have my word, my daughter. Go. It won't work. You'll miss it there. It's never too late to come back. Go. Don't be afraid of anything. I'm not old yet. I can manage without you. What about you, Camille? What about you? Do you agree? Olivia asked. Oh, I don't even know how. The girl was confused. And how? You get on the train and go. There we'll meet you. We'll take you to the place. So do not even worry. That's how quickly. The place will not wait. They gathered Camille, bought a ticket, put her on the train, and she went to her new life. She was scared on the way. She had not eaten anything for 2 days. She couldn't eat anything, and it turned out to be nothing scary at all. Lisa, Aunt Olivia's niece, met her at the station, drove her home, and on the way, just like her mother, described all the charms of life in a new family. The owners Isabella and Michael welcomed Camille, showed her everything, told her everything, and Lisa promised to come by and introduce Camille to the wisdom of living in the city and taking care of the apartment. The apartment itself was large, 3-roomed, and the girl, who had never been anywhere but her village, was amazed. At first she was afraid to touch anything. Everything seemed so luxurious and fragile, but Lisa reassured her. Don't worry, Camille. I was scared at first, too, but then nothing. I ran around the apartment as if it were my own. I broke a couple of plates. Nobody noticed, and even if they did, it would be all right. People are not evil, not harmful. The main thing is to be brave. All troubles happen because of fear. You better see what room you'll live in. You probably never dreamed of such a place at home. The room really seemed luxurious to Camille, though small, with a narrow window, but it was her own, and she had everything she needed: a bed, a table, and a closet with a large mirror. And on the wall was a picture, not a simple one cut out of a magazine, but a real one, framed under glass. A beautiful woman against the background of a bush with roses, as in a museum, and in the rooms Camille had already seen, not rugs on the walls, but pictures in frames, as apparently cultured people should have. Oh, Lisa, if only to be able to do everything, if only to please the owners, she could only exhale. The owners really treated her well, both Michael and Isabella. They both worked, but Camille didn't quite understand where, that is, about the owner of the house. She didn't understand. He didn't say where he worked. Isabella had said she taught at a university. For a modest housekeeper, this statement was tantamount to saying that the mistress could fly. Camille and students then considered some kind of celestials, doing something supernatural. And here you have a person who teaches these unusual people, and she, Camille, calmly solves with her all sorts of domestic issues. Who would have thought it? Isabella doesn't get on Camille's nerves. If you don't understand something, she doesn't order you, doesn't shout, explains it so clearly, so intelligently, that you don't want to, but you will understand everything. Soon Camille stopped being afraid of everything, realized that a gas stove is much safer than an oven. The refrigerator is much more convenient, and the owners are even more affectionate than her own mother, who can yell and shout and towel chase if you do something wrong. And then suddenly it began, as Camille called her first and only love. Yes, it was Michael, a solid, handsome man. At first Camille was so timid in front of him that she couldn't even raise her eyes. All she could see was either his plaid slippers or his shined shoes. She learned that it was she who was to put a gloss on these elegant shoes on the first day. In front of his wife, Michael paid little attention to the housekeeper, dropping polite words. "Good morning. Thank you, please. See you tonight," and that was it. With this politeness he surprised the girl. Why should she thank him for the food or laundry, or for the same shoes, if he pays money for it? But apparently that's the way it is with such people, the culture. They, husband and wife, were also polite to each other, no swearing ever, not a rude word. When Michael called her Camille, the name seemed to sound different, and her heart seemed to melt, but he called her that only when Isabella was not around, which made their communication quite intimate. "Why, Camille, you are afraid of me, for we are closer than kin to each other." So he said, and his voice was as if sad. She really felt Michael closer than a relative, though she was afraid to admit even to herself that she had already fallen in love with him. "He loves me too," Camille guessed. To admit, only afraid, because he is married, but it does not matter so much. They have no children, and therefore, and husband and wife, they are not so real. So she calmed herself, gave herself hope, but she realized that they were real, and she was just a servant. A year later she did not hide her feelings, and sometimes cried at night. "I was lucky to fall in love with you, my dear Michael." She was ashamed to call him that, even to herself, and feared that she might say it during the day, so she allowed herself to say it, Michael, rarely, once a week. She persuaded herself to be patient. In 3 more days, so be it. Ah! She was exhausted from this love. She even lost weight. Her face fell off, as her mother would say. And he, apparently, guessed, and one day it happened between them. Quite by chance, one beautiful sunny morning, when the landlady had gone to teach her students and Michael was late for some reason, and Camille was in no hurry to leave the kitchen, not on purpose. It was just that there were some things to do, ordinary, everyday things. It was just that it was getting harder and harder to do them. Her hands, as if ossified, her fingers were numb and cold, and her heart was beating so hard that it seemed to be heard on the street, and in her head it was beating. Now it will happen. Michael must have felt it too, because he didn't even look like he was doing anything, but just sat there looking at Camille. Finally he whispered, "Camille, you love me." And she turned around, looking at him with all her eyes, and answered in a broken voice, "Yes, and I have loved you for a long time. And tell me, why do we have to torture each other like this?" Approaching the girl, Michael spoke. Seeing that Camille was ready to fall senseless, he picked her up and carried her in his arms to the bedroom, not to her cell, but to the marital bedroom on a wide bed as a newlywed. 15 minutes later, Camille, tucked into her lover's shoulder, wept sweetly with great relief. At last her love had found a way out. She is with her beloved, and it will always be so. They are already husband and wife, and that other know to think of Isabella, so kind, beautiful, intelligent, but hopelessly unloved, did not want to absolutely. "What are you crying about, Camille?" Michael asked. "Do you regret what happened?" "No, Michael, I'm happy. You really love me, don't you?" "I love you very much, my dear." The man's voice was suddenly affirming. He shook off the lover's languor. "But let's make a deal. Even when we're alone, no Michael, and no you, it's for our own safety. You get used to it. You slip up in front of Isabella, and everything goes to shit. Agreed?" Of course. Camille wasn't the least bit ticked off by that order. "I'll never make a mistake, Michael. No one will suspect a thing. Just don't leave me." "My good girl, how can I leave you?" He looked back at the sheet. "And now, alas, I must go. You two don't lie around. Carefully clean up everything, the traces. Meet Isabella tonight as if nothing had happened." He got up and began to dress carefully. Camille also tried to tidy up. She had little interest in the future, even in terms of further development of the relationship. At that moment she was happy, she loved and was loved. What else was needed? And the fact that her beloved is married, well, what does it matter? He alienates his wife in conversation, calls her by name and patronymic. Does that say something? Doesn't it? Well, there she is, Isabella. What can you do? What if I live here someday as a landlady? The girl thought with a sinking heart. But I'll never take a young housekeeper, no way. Such thoughts made her feel funny and anxious. Would Michael ever dare to change their lives? Though such thoughts came later, at first she was just happier than she had ever been in her life. She was most afraid that it would become noticeable to others, on the street, to strangers. That's half a miracle. But at home, Isabella herself would notice. And no matter how hard Camille tried to hold back, to make herself look serious, the landlady noticed and once jokingly asked her at dinner, "Why are you glowing, Camille? Are you in love?" "Me? No, why?" The girl was confused, embarrassed. "Well, don't blush, it's the right time for it. But don't hurry with marriage, we don't want to stay without you." The landlady calmed her down. The girl ran out of the kitchen, but heard Isabella say to her husband, "Shouldn't we shine, Michael?" This caused Camille a wave of such jealousy, for every night her lover embraces his lawful wife, and she. For the first time, She thought about the fact that at some point some certainty would have to be brought to their relationship. But how could one say so? Only once did she shyly ask, "Will it always be like this, Michael?" She meant their secret love, but he understood otherwise or pretended otherwise. "What are you going to do? Quit your job?" "Don't even think about it. I won't let you go." Her lover jokingly interrupted her. Camille laughed happily again, quite satisfied with this answer. She did not want to think that it could not go on like this forever, but she could not imagine that it would end. But one day it ended the way it was supposed to. Isabella caught her lover in a most unambiguous position. Either they themselves had lost caution or she suspected something and decided to arrange an audit. The door suddenly opened. The dumbfounded wife and mistress stared silently at her husband and housekeeper, frantically trying to cover themselves. Isabella, without uttering a word, walked out of the room, closing the door behind her. "Oh shit, what a mess." Without looking at Camille, Michael muttered. He quickly zipped up and left the room without looking at his mistress. Camille was already dressed, but did not dare to go out. She was afraid to meet her mistress. Who knows what these deceived wives are capable of? What if she had boiling water ready? She had heard of such atrocities. There were no sounds of scandal or fighting in the corridor, only quiet voices, words Camille could not make out. It was very noisy in the ears. Maybe she was talking about a divorce? She hoped so. Isabella appeared in the doorway again. "Well, are you standing there?" she asked contemptuously. "Pack up and leave immediately." "Yes, how can I? Where to?" Camille mumbled confusedly. She waited for Michael to appear, to intercede, to tell his wife that he loved Camille, that he would not let her go anywhere, but he did not appear. Had she not killed him? The girl was terrified. "Quickly, you could talk about it in your own village," the landlady continued. Camille stepped timidly out of the bedroom, looked around. There was no blood anywhere, but no Michael either. "Maybe he's in my room?" she thought, motioned to the den. No, it was empty. "Quickly gather your things and get out. I won't tolerate you here a minute longer. I'll give you a final payment now." The landlady quickly went into the living room, and Camille began to obediently gather her poor belongings and wait for Michael. He could not fail to show up, to tell her that everything would be all right, that they would still be together. But he did not appear, though he must have been in the apartment, alive and well. "Come in to see me," the landlady shouted from the living room, and when Camille entered, she placed a small wad of bills in front of the girl. "That's all I owe you, although I should throw you out in disgrace. I took you into my home as my own, and you even got into bed with me." "What am I saying?" "They have no conscience. Have you packed your things?" "That's it. Take the money and get out of here." Camille heard footsteps in the hallway. It could only be him, Michael. Now they'll come in and tell her everything. But no, the door of the other room slammed again. "I must see Michael." In a trembling voice, Camille said to the landlady, "No, I've seen enough." Isabella pushed her out into the corridor. "Michael?" Camille shouted in desperation, but there was no answer. "Don't make me use force or call the police. It's not in your interest." Isabella was already grinning evilly in the face of the tear-stained girl. "Michael has already gotten everything from you. No one here is interested in you anymore. You're lying. He loves me, not you." Camille shouted, took her bags and suitcase, and went to the door. "He and I will see each other, and we'll be together forever." As the door slammed behind her, Isabella entered the room where her husband sat holding his head. "Well, have you heard what fantasies your beloved has? Why are you sitting there? Why don't you run after her? Why don't you kick me out? Why don't you stand up for her? "Stop it, Isabella. You and I will stay together like we always have. I hope you'll forgive me and we'll forget all this." Michael looked hopefully at his wife. "I love you, Michael, and I don't want a divorce. Will I forgive you?" "Probably, but it will hardly be possible to forget. Such things are not forgotten." Isabella answered firmly. Camille went outside, not knowing where she was going. Her heart was racing. Her hands were shaking. There were no tears, only complete emptiness in her head. She sat down on some bench, opened a small purse where there were documents and money, and noticed the edge of a white envelope. Well, of course Michael had managed to put a letter to her, explaining where and when they would meet. Clearly this snake, Isabella, had intimidated him with something, wouldn't even let him say goodbye. She pulled out a strangely heavy and thick envelope, which clearly contained more than just a note, opened it money, but that was okay. The main thing was a leaf written in hurried letters. "Camille, this money will be enough for you for the first time. Get yourself a job, or better still, go home to your mother. Don't try to see me. Don't come to see me at all. Don't even come near the house. You might make things very difficult. I hope you'll be reasonable." "That's it? No signature, no nothing?" "What do you mean?" "What do you mean, Weve? Why?" She thought confusedly as she held the sheet in her hands. Camille couldn't quite remember how she lived for the next couple of months. Somehow she lived, rented a room in some dormitory or brothel, and slept more and more, woke up, waited for something and waited. After 2 months, all her hopes were confirmed. She had an excuse to go to her beloved, to try to influence him in some way. She came to the house, which she considered her own for more than a year. She rang the bell and the door was opened by an elderly woman she didn't know. "What do you want?" She asked me sternly. "I really need to see Michael." "Wait, let me ask you something." The woman unceremoniously closed the door in front of Camille and left. Isabella appeared a minute later. "You've decided not to abandon your endeavors after all, haven't you? Do you want to get into serious trouble?" She asked contemptuously, even contemptuously. "I want Michael." Camille tried to speak firmly, but she could hear her voice shaking. "He doesn't need you, and no one here does. Get out." The landlady wanted to close the door, but Camille held her back and said desperately, "I can't just leave like this. I'm having a baby." And the landlady's face twitched strangely. She staggered back. "What? Get out. I don't want to see you again. I want Michael," the girl said in despair. "He's not here. He's gone, all right. Go away, Camille. Don't make it worse." The door slammed shut. Isabella went into the room where her husband was watching soccer. "What did you hear yours was here?" Michael turned off the TV, stared at his wife. "Why? What do you mean, why? She loves you, believes you. She's expecting a child." "Run. Catch up, apologize." Swallowing tears, Isabella said, "No, Isabella, I'm not going anywhere. And she's probably lying." "Isabella, don't cry, please, we'll still be together." "I don't want any children, no Camille, I told you." And Camille realized that her last hope was gone, whether Michael had left or not, but the landlady was not deceived. He didn't want Camille, and nobody did. It became clear after she returned to her mother, hoping somehow to survive the grief, to give birth to a child, and then, well, as it turns out. It was scary, of course, to confess everything to her mother, but where could she go but to her home? Clara at first rejoiced at her daughter's arrival, thinking that she had come on vacation, but when she heard why Camille had actually come, she pointed at the door. "I warned you, why are you here now, to embarrass me?" "Oh no. Go back to where you've been fattening up." Go to your beau and let him do what he wants with you, even eat your porridge. He doesn't want anything. He's the boss I worked for." Camille cried. "With a married man? Oh, you're a bitch. Get out of town, I say, to the city, and I don't want to see you here. You hear me? We'll tell people that you came to visit with news, and don't cry, make a cheerful face, you came to visit," Mother said angrily. She did not raise her voice. On the contrary, she spoke quietly, but the expression on her face could frighten anyone. "Mommy, I have nowhere to go." Camille did not cry. She was filled with utter despair, even indifference to herself, to the future child, to Michael. "Please let me live somehow, even in the barn, even in the summer kitchen. I'll give birth, and then they'll go away, honestly." "Are you crazy? What barn? Who are you going to give birth to? To have people spit in my eyes. Go away, I'm telling you, or I'll disgrace you myself, drag you by the hair into the street, and chase you through the village with a dirty rag. You unscrupulous slut, you've done it, you'll have to get out of it yourself." Realizing that no amount of pleading would work on her mother, Camille left her home wherever her eyes took her, where no one knows her, where she will not dishonor her mother. In a distant village, where for a while she lived in an abandoned house, then moved to a lonely and little understanding old woman who took Camille for her granddaughter. When she felt that it was time to give birth, she went on foot to the village hospital, where they did not want to accept her, and when they did, it was too late, or her weakened body could not withstand the birth of 2 children at once. Camille died without regaining consciousness. Clara was the first to hear the sad news, and she came to bury her daughter. It was not so far to go. The next day, the funny mother already bent over the body of her only daughter. "Camille, my poor girl, it's my fault. I sent you to town, and then I threw you out of the house. I had no pity. Forgive me, my dear." The deceased girl began to prepare to be sent to her native village, where they were going to bury her in the fence of her grandfather and grandmother, and Clara was taken to see her granddaughters. "Well, decide what to do with them, whether you want to take them for yourselves or write a refusal. We can't keep the children here. They should be sent to a children's home." Looking at her granddaughters, the woman was in tears again. "I can't afford 2. I'm not old enough, but I don't want to give up both of them either. I'll take one of them, the one who was born bigger, just like my Camille. And the other one, God willing, will be adopted by good people, will grow up, and then maybe they'll meet someday." So I brought home a dead daughter and a living granddaughter. At the cemetery, she cried over the fresh grave, talked to her long-dead father and mother, apologized for everything, but Ethan, your Camille daddy, disappeared unknown where, and you won't find his grave, and I'll name your daughter Melissa. A beautiful name, unusual. Let her live, maybe she'll be happy. You rest in peace. Don't be afraid, I won't hurt the child, and I won't allow such a thing to happen to you." Michael got a call. They said that Camille had given birth to twins, girls, and died. Is that how it is? There is no Camille anymore. There are 2 girls, her and my continuation in this world. He mumbled confusedly. Then he poured cognac into his glass, took a couple of sips to calm his inner trembling, and went to inform his wife about what had happened. He felt sorry for Isabella, too. He saw how bitterly she cried when she learned of his mistress's pregnancy. She herself had long been diagnosed with infertility. He was cowardly then. Let Camille go somewhere unknown. He did not want to upset his wife. But now it's a different case. His own daughters will not grow up as orphans. Let Isabella take it as she wills and do as she knows how, but he can't live otherwise. Isabella turned white when she heard her husband's story about Camille, But when she heard that he was going to take his girls and adopt them, she shook her head. No, 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 it won't do, Michael. I won't take children from that one and think, are they yours? She lived with you. She could have lived with a dozen more. No, she couldn't. First of all, remember, she had no time for anything but shopping. And secondly, I'm sorry, but she loved me. I was her first, the only one, and I ruined her, and I won't ruin my daughters. Of course, you can only ruin me. Then you brought your mistress into our bed, and now her children. Isabella sobbed, and Michael began to get ready to go. The housekeeper after Camille, not a young one, as Isabella said, experienced with references. Michael immediately asked her if Barbara would agree to take on the babysitting duties, but she waved her hands. I don't know how to take care of children. Infants and 2 babies at once. No, look for a nanny if you want. I can help. That is, ask around in my circles. But I'm out of here. No, you stay and we'll find a nanny, said Michael. Isabella, who had heard this conversation, smiled crookedly at her husband. Well, a house full of servants and your own children. There won't be room for me, will there? Don't be silly, Isabella. You're my wife, my dearest person. Remember, it wasn't cowardice that made me give up Camille and choose you. You're dear to me. I can't do it without you. And I believe you'll accept the girls, too. You're not what you want to be now. You're angry. You see, there's no one left to be jealous of. I promised I'd never do it again. What's jealousy got to do with it? I just can't imagine this life, and I don't want to live like this. Those girls are your daughters, aren't they mine? I'm sorry, they're strangers to me. A constant reminder of your betrayal. I wouldn't respect myself if I started washing their dirty diapers. They'll be daughters to you too. Think about it, they're newborns. They don't know any other mom. Michael went to a village he didn't know to pick up his daughters. There he got the news. Only one girl remained. The second was taken away by relatives. Maybe it's for the best. Michael thought, with one is easier, and the second is still not in an orphanage, and at the home of relatives. Although they say it is impossible to separate twins, but it could happen, so what can be done? So I came home with one little girl. What about the other one? Lost it on the way or threw it away? Isabella said gloomily. She wouldn't even look at the baby. She left, locked herself in the bedroom. While Michael was away, Barbara, at his request, bought everything necessary for the baby, that is, for 2 children. They were expecting twins. Her nanny, Kelly, helped her with the selection. An elderly woman, also with a lot of experience. She took the baby in her arms and reassured the father. Don't worry, I've raised a dozen of these kids, and they're all alive and well. My first child is already married, and your Molly is not up to marriage, but up to school. Somehow I will reach. Well, for a start, she'll have everything she needs, and in duplicate. Yes, Michael decided to name the girl Molly. I tried to consult Isabella, but she was rude. Camille should be called Camille. In honor of her mother, she'll be a kitchen worker too, and in her spare time she'll please the owners. Shame on you, Isabella, to talk like that about a dead woman, especially as she was not guilty of anything, much less a child. Did you even look at how pretty she was? Let Molly be Molly. All right, I'm wrong. Let Camille forgive me where she is. What you name your daughter and what she looks like is the least of my concern. Deal with her yourself if you have nothing better to do. The housekeeper Barbara left after all. She decided she didn't need an extra person in the house. Isabella took over the household herself, especially since she had less work to do. She treated the girl, whom she had never learned to consider a daughter, although she had officially adopted her, coolly, in her arms, did not talk to her, even to the crib approached without much willingness, and looked at the little girl rather with dislike. Only when Molly was 6 months old, there was a breakthrough. Isabella came to the crib as if on duty, as always indifferent, looked at the child, and suddenly the girl quite meaningfully looked at her, her blue eyes, and blossomed such an open, sincere smile. And the woman, deprived of the opportunity to have their own children, suddenly reached for the girl really maternally. "Molly, my little drop, come to me, baby." Callie slipped out of the room and, wiping her eyes, said to Michael, "Thank goodness our mommy's heart has melted. Hush, don't come in yet. Let her enjoy her daughter." Indeed, from that moment Isabella became a real mother for Molly, loving and caring. She did not spoil the girl excessively, did not try to somehow win her love, just loved herself. And as the girl grew, there was such affection and mutual understanding between them that Isabella herself forgot that she was not the one who gave birth to Molly. Melissa grew up in the village with her grandmother Clara. The girl knew that her mother died in childbirth, her father was unknown, and she got used to living with this knowledge. The grandmother loved and took care of her granddaughter, tried not to make the girl feel deprived in anything, and Melissa did not feel deprived. However, she was a girl who was not capricious, not demanding, and she loved her grandmother very much and tried to take care of her. And how do children take care of adults? They help and do not cause unnecessary problems. Melissa did just that. Since she was little, she helped her grandmother, both at home and in the vegetable garden. She did not like to go for a walk. She enjoyed spending time with her grandmother, listening to stories about her mother and her sad fate. I let my Camille go to the city. That's how it turned out, but it was impossible for her, a modest, simple-minded girl. It's not for nothing they say that where one is born, one is useful, and I orphaned myself and you. "And my daddy, who was he?" the girl asked. "I don't know. I never saw him. I only heard his name was Michael." "Well, he must be a bad man if he seduced a girl and threw her out of the house. He cheated on his wife too, but that's their business. She forgave him, of course, for a sweet piece of money and position. Probably lives, and now he doesn't give a shit. Doesn't know about you. Well, you don't know what to think about him." Clara didn't mention that Melissa was born with more than one sister. Why would a girl want to worry about that? She would start thinking about this sister, and even start looking for her, and where would she find her? It's unnecessary torment, and Melissa's sensitive enough as it is. And God be with this sister, or her grandmother will blame her for not taking them both. But she loves her grandmother and realizes that they are alone in the world. And Melissa studied well. She dreamed of being a doctor, and for this she had to try harder, to study more, so she spent a lot of time at home for books in order to learn and not to argue with her grandmother. Because if there was one thing Melissa suffered from as a child, it was overprotection. Clara had to know every minute where her granddaughter was, with whom, and what she was doing, and this naturally deprived the girl of many entertainments of her youth, and not only entertainments. When Melissa finished the 9th grade, her teacher offered her to go to another school in a distant large village. There the level of education is much better, and you can live in a boarding school. When she turned with this proposal to her grandmother, she only mockingly resented. "What are you talking about? Who is it, a girl of 15 years from home? I'm sorry, I do not have extra granddaughters. What's so scary about it? You're not going somewhere, but to school?" The teacher was surprised. Not to school, to some boarding school. And what happens when grown-up boys and girls live without supervision on their own? It's an outrage, you know. Why unsupervised? There are teachers, tutors. There have never been any outrages, and the teachers there are good, because the main thing is not a boarding school, but a school. What's not a school here? I'm telling you, the teachers there are stronger. They'll prepare your Melissa for the institute. What institute? I'm not going to let her go anywhere. There's nothing to do in those institutes. Why didn't I take her out of school after 9th grade? It's just so the girl doesn't break down at work. Let her finish high school, and then she can go out, even to work on a farm, and she's had enough of these sciences. What are you talking about? The girl has abilities she wants to learn. If she doesn't, I won't let her go anywhere. You have my word. I've already let one go like that. She came back in a coffin, and she was my daughter, the only one. My husband also left for a better life, but there was no grave left, and now I'm going to let my granddaughter go like this. No, it's just the way we were born. Where we're born, we're useful. I am amazed, Clara, at your stiffness and selfishness. The teacher said in her heart, Melissa, the girl is intelligent, decent, so be amazed and let her remain decent. You'd better be amazed than I will be when my only granddaughter is in trouble. And anyway, why are you all rushing off somewhere and dragging your children with you? Somebody has to live in the countryside. Don't you agree? And people live, they live very well. The teacher realized that it was useless to argue with an elderly woman who had been through a lot and was therefore frightened for life, so she left with nothing. She also talked to Melissa and found out that she agreed with her grandmother, that is, she did not want to argue with her and spoil her health. What can you do? That's my grandmother. What's the big deal? Well, I'll finish studying at our school, and when I graduate, then it will be obvious. Then I'll be an adult. Then we'll see how things turn out. The teacher only sighed. She felt sorry for this girl, so intelligent and capable. And in a couple of years, of course, she would be older, but her grandmother would be older, and it would hardly improve her character, and she would hold her granddaughter back with renewed strength, press her pity. So Melissa won't go to school. Of course, the teacher can't do anything about it. She just feels sorry for the girl. Melissa also perfectly finished 11th grade, and here the question of enrollment became especially acute. The grandmother was adamant. There is no reason for you to go. I have already agreed at the farm. They will take you, not as a milkmaid, but as an accountant. What's wrong with that? And a doctor, what kind of job is that? To study for another 6 years, and then to pick through other people's rotten guts for a penny, you've made up your own ideas. And most importantly, think about your mother. She left. So what? Grandma dear, where did she go? To be a housekeeper. That's what caused all the trouble. No, the trouble is that she was left without supervision, without guidance. I know what students do in these institutes of yours. I watch TV. So a student will come here, and then she'll make such a mess. It's scary to think about. No, Melissa, whatever you want, I'm not letting you go. How can you argue with an old man who builds his ideas about modern life on the basis of soap operas? Melissa tried every evening to convince her grandmother of the necessity to study, but it resulted only in scandals. How not sorry how the girl did not love her grandmother. She realized more and more clearly that she would have to leave her native home and start an independent life, and to do this had to do not at all as the girl wanted. She thought that after graduation she would stay at home, calm Clara down, convince her of the necessity of further studies and go to enroll, but her grandmother every day more and more stubbornly opposed the possible departure of her granddaughter. She locked all her granddaughter's things in the closet, hid the money, went to the farm, arranged for Melissa to go to her new job in a month. You should be glad you're staying at home and that you young people are so frivolous. There's your friends. They're not all going away. Mary, there she is. Kathy, too, and you're still drawn somewhere else. You've got everything, a nice house, a farm, a job. What else do you need? I need to study. Why did I graduate high school with a medal? Those friends, Mary, she's 7 months pregnant and didn't have to go to the city to make a mess, as you say. And Kathy, what can I say? She's feeble-minded, she's on disability, and you want me to look up to them. I want you home, and you're staying home. Clara cut her off. She knew how to be very bossy, and did not know that at such moments her granddaughter began to sincerely hate her grandmother. And it was at that very moment that a sharp dislike struck her heart painfully. Yes, my grandmother doesn't want to let me go, whether it's because she's afraid for me or because she doesn't want to be alone. And she will never want to, and probably never forgive me if I leave, just like she hasn't forgiven my mother. Yeah, that's how my grandmother is. Kick out her own daughter, pregnant, helpless, and I expect her to tell me, "Go, granddaughter, study." She'll never say that. Then what am I supposed to do? Sit next to her all my life? No way. I'll leave tomorrow morning. I won't even wait till morning. People wake up early, someone will see, grandmother will shout to the heavens, and then my escape will be over, and after that I don't know what else she will think of. Maybe she'll put me on a chain. So the most important decision of my life was made. Melissa, of course, wrote Grandma a penitential and explanatory note. And as soon as there was a snoring sound, indicating that the grandmother had fallen soundly asleep, she put the note on the table, pressed it with a vase, took a travel bag in which she had put a few necessities in advance, a small amount of saved money, and slipped out of the house. By the time I reached the highway, it had dawned, but I didn't wait for the bus. First of all, it was still about 2 hours before its arrival, and I didn't want to sit at the bus stop. Melissa boldly set off along the road towards the train station, which she had to walk to for several hours. But she was in no hurry. She could rest on the way, and maybe she could catch a hitchhiker. She didn't know the schedule of trains, as well as the price of a ticket, but now the main thing for her was to get out of her native place. Cars overtook her rarely. The traffic was not very busy at this early hour. So when one car stopped, Melissa was surprised. She hadn't tried to vote yet. "Do you need a ride?" A young, handsome guy peeped out of the passenger compartment. "If only for free." Having gathered courage, the girl answered. This young man, for some reason, immediately aroused confidence, and driving is still better than walking. Scary stories about what happened to girls who sat in hitchhikers. She tried not to remember, restrained herself. Don't be like your grandmother. It's clear that it's free. Opening the door, the guy said, "Where do you want me to take you?" "I'm going to the train station." "Great. Where are you going at this early hour?" "To the station, and from there by train to the city." Melissa answered in the same tone. "Without luggage, without escorts. Did you run away from someone? And how did you guess?" Melissa was cheerfully surprised. "I left my grandmother." "And from your grandfather?" The young man, apparently, was also more and more pleasant to talk to the girl. "My grandfather ran away from my grandmother a long time ago. Your grandmother must have been a fighter." "She's a fighter." "And Melissa, that's great. You're good." "Honestly, I admire you. That is, many young people from villages leave their parents, some to study, some to work. But how they leave, with a blessing, with a dowry, with the obligatory promise to send potatoes and other products in the fall. And you just took your purse and went on your way. What else was there to do?" "Grandma wouldn't let me go. Not with the dowry, not at all. I'd have stayed in the village all my life, working on a farm, or I don't know where else. No, it's not a bad village, but I want to study. If I'd finished school with C's, I'd sit there quietly, but why not study further, right? It's the right thing to do. Besides, you've chosen a good profession. It's great to be a doctor. Look, we're almost to the train station. As you wish, but I don't want to part with you. You're a great traveling companion. Why don't I drive you to town like this? Why not? It'll be faster and more convenient. If it's not too much trouble, I don't know. What's so hard about it? I'm not saying I'll carry you on my shoulders. I'll take you by car, especially if I'm going to town myself, and it's more fun in company, so we'll both benefit. You'll get there, and I won't be bored. But you know what? Let's start talking on a first-name basis, first of all. And secondly, let's get to know each other. My name is Emil, and you are. I'm Melissa. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. And we should go for breakfast. There's a little cafe near the station. You're welcome. Oh, thank you, it's embarrassing. You're driving and feeding me. I didn't expect it to be so comfortable to run away from somewhere. Well, there are happy accidents in life. I didn't expect to meet such a nice and sociable girl as a traveling companion. At breakfast, they continued to chat cheerfully, and Melissa told me that she was going to the city almost at random. She had no one there and no one to stay with. I'm going to stay at the station for a while, and then we'll see. Maybe there's some kind of hostel for incoming students, or I'll find out anyway after all. Everyone's settling in somehow. Since we're traveling together, we've already become friends, almost close people. I suggest you live not at the train stations, where girls don't belong, but at my house. No, I'm not offering you anything bad, but I have a 2-room apartment, and I live alone. That is, you would until your enrollment, or there as it turns out, you can live with me, of course. I'm not going to take money from you or force you to provide any services. Just stay until you get settled, that's all. Well, you know, that's too much. Melissa was confused. What do you mean, too much? Why can't I do you a favor? I mean, invite you to visit me. Maybe, by the way, I have some mercantile considerations. You study to become a doctor, and I'll get sick. Who's going to treat me? I'll come straight to you. Well, Melissa, would you be kind enough to treat me for free? Remember how I drove you to town? That's it. I'm not a selfless do-gooder. All right, I'll do it on those terms. I promise to treat you all my life, and not only you, but all your relatives, free of charge and of high quality. Solemnly promised Melissa. Well, about relatives, you will not be tortured. I do not have so many of them, and I myself do not suffer from any diseases, but you know, all under God, as they say. And in general, it will be even pleasant for me to come home and see that there is a light on in my window. Someone is waiting for me. We did not pass halfway. As Melissa started to peck her nose, she had not slept all night and was nervous. Emil, to all appearances, was also tired, and the way was not far. That's why he stopped in a small town, near a hotel, equipped in an apartment house. There he took 2 rooms, one for himself and one for Melissa. No, well, such luck I honestly did not expect. The girl said, I thought I would be on a train for 2 days. Frankly speaking, I have almost no money with me, so trifles. If I had enough for a ticket, it would be good, but for tea, it is quite possible that there would be no money left. I can't imagine how I would have traveled. Honestly, Emile, I feel like crying now. And why is that? Do you regret leaving? No, I'm glad I left, and I'm even happier that I met you. It's a miracle, honestly. I lived with my grandmother. She did not scare me with the fact that people are such and such, that some terrible stories happen to girls who left home. but here it is like this. I didn't have such happy stories at home either. In our village, people are all good, of course, but I can't imagine who would take a stranger to town for free, feed him, put him up for the night, and then offer to live with him as a result, even with the prospect of some kind of treatment in the distant future. Never mind, Melissa. I'll be honest with you, I just really liked you. If you were some woman in her 50s, I'd probably give her a free ride to the train station. She'd probably go there to sell apples, but that's all. I wouldn't drive her to the city and take her to cafes, so don't attribute any great qualities to me. It seems to me that not every man will shower all sorts of favors, at least for free. Forgive me for saying so. By the way, I like you very much, and not only because you treated me like that, but just like you, and that's all. In the city, Melissa moved into Emil's apartment. The first thing, she went to the institute to learn about the rules of admission, to submit documents, then she prepared for exams, studied a lot, but the girl did not forget to keep the household. Emil had lived alone for a long time, and the fact that there was a mistress in the apartment was to his advantage. Melissa was not used to sitting idle, so she took on cleaning, cooking lunches, breakfasts, and dinners. They also talked a lot every free minute, and no wonder that two beautiful young people soon became a real couple and a happy couple. Emil immediately told the girl that he was not going to exchange for any civil marriages and offered her to become his wife, not having finished the first year. Melissa married the man she loved. About the changes in her life, she informed her grandmother, called on the phone. The conversation was terrible. Her grandmother cursed her, forbade her to come, and said that from now on she has no granddaughter. But the girl did not forget that she has a grandmother. She faithfully sent her congratulations on every holiday, wrote letters about her life, but here to visit her and did not get out, and the scandal was afraid. And there was no time. She studied, worked, and when she graduated from the institute and already got a job at the hospital, she was informed that her grandmother died. This news came as a complete surprise. Of course, the girl perfectly understood that the grandmother is not young and not eternal, but she was always so energetic, so determined. It seemed that they still had time to make up, to become together again, the most kindred people, and suddenly, Melissa had to go to her native place for the funeral, but also to sell her grandmother's house. After crying at the family graves and settling things with the house, she went back to the city where her husband and work were waiting for her. She decided to spend the money from the sale of the house on renovating the apartment where she and Emil lived. Although she tried to keep it in order, but still the apartment needed some remodeling, and the money was not so much, and for something more substantial, they would not be enough. In general, in their family, there was never any extra income. Emil, of course, worked, but Melissa could not get into the essence of his occupation. He was the manager of a large businessman, and most of all dreamed of organizing his own business. He had even made attempts to start his own business, but without success. The fault of his failures was mostly lack of money. Emil often lamented, "I was born too late. They say that in the last century you could literally start from scratch and quite quickly turn around. And now what?" Melissa believed that her husband lacks not only money, but also knowledge, the right connections, and much more, but to talk about it aloud avoided. Why break the dream of her beloved man? And there was no harm in it. Even when Emil tried to organize something, it did not bring income, but did not ruin them. There were losses, but insignificant. What bothered Melissa more was that Emil was very upset about failures. After all, he tried, did something, and again nothing worked out. The man did not leave his attempts, which sometimes worried Melissa. She knew that Emil was a risky man, and one day her worries were justified. Emil came home cheerful, excited, with a bottle of champagne. "Let's go out, Melissa. My dream has come true. I have prepared a successful business project for which I was given a loan of money." "How much?" Melissa tensed up. From the answer, she was horrified. "Emil, are you crazy? What if something goes wrong? Melissa, can you for once not spoil my party? Bring the glasses quickly." "What's the matter with you?" "Whenever I think of something, it's a car. What if this? What if that? Why don't we just sit here and do nothing? Remember, you complained about your grandmother, and now you're adopting her habits. Genes are a great thing. What will happen to you in your old age? All right, Emil, let's celebrate, but you have to admit, there's still a risk involved, and the sum is too large. How are we going to pay it back?" "Oh, really?" "Let's think of it the other way around. We've already made a lot of money, paid off all our debts, and are living happily ever after. How are you gonna make it? I think your problem is that you're always thinking about the end result in your mind, which is always successful. And you don't even think about how you're going to get that luck. The main thing is to get into the fight. And how many times have you been in a fight? At least you didn't get into such monstrous debts before." "No, I can't do that. What kind of wife am I?" "You can't come to her with anything, not with grief, not with joy. If it's joy, then I don't want anything to happen. If it's trouble, but I told you. Do I have to do everything in silence, without telling you anything?" "Oh, come on, honey. We've never kept secrets from each other. I'm always on your side, remember? I'm glad you got something, and when you do, I'll be happy. Come on, let's drink to success." So Emil started his business. For 6 months, he was businesslike, active, serious, and in the end, completely happy. Things were going well. He even started talking about having a baby. It had been put off until better times, which never came. Melissa was also happy for her husband, although at first there was no special income. On the contrary, sometimes they had to live in austerity mode. What about children? And then things began to get upset. Emil was increasingly frustrated, traveling on some business that his wife did not know about, constantly talking to someone on the phone, then arguing, then asking for some kind of postponement. In the end, it became clear that he again failed. The huge debt had increased and was still hanging on Emil, and therefore on Melissa. After a year, it was finally clear that he had failed. He was ruined. "Emil, how is it? Why don't you tell me anything? Are we doing so badly?" She finally decided to ask her husband. He had been so irritable lately that he reacted violently to more innocent questions. And so it was this time. "Oui, I'm bad. What do you care? Sit in your hospital, give enemas or whatever it is you do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Just keep your mouth shut this time, I told you. What's the use of you talking? Other people have wives, business assistants, and mine can only prescribe Validol. Who stopped you from going into economics? You know, there's a saying. If a husband is a merchant, his wife is an accountant. I didn't marry a merchant, and you knew I wasn't going to be an accountant. What's the use if you don't listen to me anyway? If I was the best accountant, economist, lawyer, you'd still do things your own way. If you had a head on your shoulders, I'd listen, but what's the use of consulting a pipe? Don't go there. Don't do that. Take your vitamins. Wash your hands before you eat. That's all your advice. You know, yeah, I haven't given advice in a long time. You do whatever you want. And this is what happens. And now what are you gonna do? Sell the apartment? You'll get so much for it, you won't even cover half your debts. The only thing to do is to sell yourself. Where? To a meat stand? Don't make up nonsense. Let's be realistic. Melissa still hoped that they could somehow settle the situation. Come on, except there aren't any. There are no unrealistic ones, by the way. Emma was annoyed and frustrated. If you declare bankruptcy, the wife was looking for options. That's female logic. You think it's so easy? It would take a lot of time, and it's not clear whether something will work out, and what's the point? Or as a bankrupt, I'll be less painful to kill. Why would they kill you? If you're dead, you won't give them anything, and this way you can at least claim half of it. They'll claim it all, my dear silly girl. They'll claim it all, every last bit of it, and I'm sorry about that. I don't know in what capacity. Maybe they'll just torture you in front of me first, so it hurts me more. In short, we're in deep shit, Melissa. Prepare for the worst. Melissa opened her mouth to say something else. Her husband jumped up, shouted some more insults, and stormed out of the apartment. The next few days became a nightmare for the woman. The husband did not return, did not answer the phone, did not give any news about himself. For some reason, Melissa was afraid to contact the law enforcement agencies. It seemed that this way she would only aggravate the situation. Finally, when she was ready to call the police, the door opened. Yes, it was Emil, alive, healthy, and even happy. Honey, where have you been? I almost went crazy. His wife rushed to him. Dance, Melissa. Emil replied, and Melissa realized that he had been drinking. I've settled everything. The money will be there. The debt will be covered. The victory will be ours. In the meantime, I have to sleep, and you have to take care of the banquet we both have to attend tonight. Get your suits in order, and most importantly, yourself. You should be radiantly beautiful content. Hair, makeup, all your feminine stuff, you know. So I'll go to bed. You get to work. Melissa, not understanding anything, began to fulfill her husband's orders. Molly, of course, had no idea about all this, nor did she know about the existence of Melissa, her twin sister. She had always considered herself the only and favorite daughter of her parents Isabella and Michael, and very happy. Sometimes envious people said, well, she was born with a golden spoon in her mouth, but Molly was offended by such statements. What does any spoon have to do with it? Yes, her parents have always supported her, but what would she have achieved if she had counted only on this support? She studied on her own, without help. If she needed help, she asked her parents to pay for a tutor, but it was not very often. So her gold medal for secondary education was not bought at all. Molly's further education was abroad, and here, yes, thanks to Dad and Mom, nothing to say. She learned that she herself, and in her father's firm worked, herself, helping the cause and not taking advantage of his position as a daughter. So envious people can console themselves with the thought that they were just unlucky, not there and not born to the wrong people. And this despite the fact that everyone knew that sometimes the children of wealthy parents only use the money of their fathers and end up very sad, and certainly its merit considered Molly her personal life. She married early, but successfully and for great love. No one will say that in their relationship with Christian was some kind of calculation. Well, and 2 beautiful children, it is definitely an undeniable merit of her Molly. That her life could be very different, she learned only about 10 years ago, just overheard a conversation between her father and mother. They were either arguing or arguing, which was rare. Do you think it was so easy for me to endure your affair with our housekeeper? Isabella said angrily, and you're going to spend the rest of your life reminding me of it. What problems did you and I have at that time? What was I, a healthy young man, supposed to do at the time? What was I supposed to do when your Camille showed up here with a belly full of your baby? How was I supposed to take that baby? Yes, I did it knowing that Molly was your daughter, she was mine. I loved her. But what was it like for me to see her growing up to be your mistress? Isabella, but that was when, wasn't it? But now we have a daughter. And what daughter? What about Camille? She paid with her life for her birth, and that's enough of that. Molly was shocked by what she heard. What were they talking about? Molly had always thought she was an only child because she was late. Her parents had almost 20 years before she was born, and there was nothing strange about that. But what she heard was, okay, Dad cheated on Mom. It happens. Especially since it was years ago, it doesn't matter and has nothing to do with Molly herself. But the fact that a certain Camille paid with her life for the birth of a wonderful daughter, that is her Molly. What's that supposed to mean? She comes out the daughter not of her parents, but of some unknown woman and father. No matter how much her parents try to hide it, she has to know everything. This secret already definitely concerns her directly, Molly. In the evening, while her father was not at home, Molly began to question her mother, and she tearfully told everything about her father's affair with the housekeeper Camille, that Isabella had thrown the girl out and she gave birth somewhere in the village, dying after childbirth. The fact that then was born a twin did not tell. Why further traumatize her daughter? And soon Molly almost forgot about the fact that she is a daughter only to her father, because Isabella managed to become such a mother, which can only dream of. Only this morning's conversation with her husband, the picture of a woman so much like Molly herself, reminded her of this story. She, Molly, looking like her own mother who had died. Or maybe she didn't die and had another daughter later? Or did she already have a child? At any rate, this resemblance can't be just a coincidence, and she must find out the truth. To do that, she'd have to talk to her father first. Dad, she sat down with her father. I know the secret of my birth. Don't worry about it. I take everything normally, and thank you and Mom for my life. But it turns out that I do not know everything. Here, look, what news I read in the newspaper, and she put the newspaper in front of Michael, with a portrait of an unknown woman with her face. My father turned pale and took the paper with a trembling hand. Yes, I should have told you everything from the beginning. But who knew? It must have been your sister. You were twins. I went to get two, but I didn't have time. My grandmother took one and raised her. Murder, psychiatric hospital. My daughter, your sister. Wait, Dad, it says here it's only a suspicion of murder. I've already told my husband to find out through his channels which hospital and what diagnosis. Don't worry, I'll go there myself and find out. Do you have to? Aren't you scared? You yourself said that this is your daughter and my sister, and their own in trouble do not abandon, and I feel that our Melissa got in big trouble and help her except for us no one. My father approved of Molly's desire to find her sister, but Isabella tried to dissuade her. Blood is not water, of course, but think, Molly, do you need such relatives? Let's say she's innocent, but it's not like the accusation was made out of thin air. I'm sorry, Mommy, but I can't not go. At least I have to find out what the case was about. Don't you agree? Molly explained. Melissa sat in the hospital garden. In nice weather, patients who were not a danger to themselves or others were allowed out for a walk. Today was a wonderfully warm, sunny fall day, and Melissa was out for some fresh air. She was a calm patient, faithfully undergoing all the procedures, obediently taking the prescribed medications. Maybe that was why her mind was so empty. Only one question sounded over and over again. Why did I have to go through all this? However, she did not remember what it was. That is, she tried not to remember the past, not to notice the present. And the future? Did Melissa have one? She indifferently watched the yellowing leaves and did not pay any attention to the fact that someone sat next to her on the bench. But this neighbor was obviously not one of her patients and had sat down for a reason. "Melissa?" she called out. The girl looked at her neighbor on the bench indifferently at first, but suddenly shrieked and recoiled. "Again?" she muttered. "A hallucination? Who are you?" And she touched the hand of the girl sitting next to her, who looked uncannily like Melissa herself. "Don't worry." The neighbor also took her hand. "I am your sister. We are twins separated as babies. Your grandmother took you. My father took me. I'm Molly, Melissa." In a trembling voice, the girl whispered, "So I'm not alone." "Yes, you have me, your father, my mom, adopted, but like family. And we want to help you get out of here. Listen, from now on, don't drink any medication. Pretend to drink, or you won't get out of here, and this way we can manage. You'll never be alone again. I don't know much of your story. You'll tell me the details later. But I believe you're innocent. It wasn't my fault. It was Emil, my husband, who set it up. It's all about the money. I'm now $100,000 in debt, but I can never pay it back. Why did they do this to me? I didn't kill anyone. Why? Why? Why?" Melissa was hysterical, and a nurse was running to them. "It'll pass. Don't worry." Molly said, "It's just that we are sisters. We haven't seen each other for a long time, so." Hugging the sobbing Melissa, she helped her to the room, laid her down. "Remember what I told you. Soon you'll be free." Melissa's story. Christian, Molly's husband, found out. Melissa was indeed charged with negligent homicide at that very banquet. It turned out that Christian knew Jacob, the father of the deceased Ethan. Did Ethan and Emil have an argument at that party? The reasons for which were not hard to guess. Money. The argument turned into a scuffle. Emil pushed Ethan down the stairs, and he died as a result. The debt issue was resolved that way, and to avoid responsibility for the murder, he blamed his own wife for the incident. To the investigator, Emil said that Ethan had harassed Melissa and she had pushed him down the stairs. She often goes on a rampage when she's angry. "I myself have suffered seriously from her," Emil declared. He didn't want his wife to go to prison, so he decided to pass her off as insane. It was not difficult, because after what happened, the girl had a serious nervous breakdown. But Jacob conducted his own investigation into the death of his son, as a result of which he learned that from the account of Ethan, a year ago, really missing amount of $100,000. He also found a receipt written by Emil, which explained a lot, especially since Emil had disappeared to an unknown destination. He was never seen again. Maybe he went abroad? But it was possible that something much more terrible had happened to him, but Melissa, and especially her sister, were no longer interested in his fate. Melissa was cleared of all charges and suspicions, and then she was released from the hospital. It was clear that all her problems were related to the situation she had gotten into. Molly and Michael, the father, came to meet her after she was discharged. Melissa, it was so strange, so unfamiliar. This elderly, already decent man, and suddenly her dad. Will she have to call him that? And could she? After all, her grandmother had spoken ill of her father many times. Kicking a pregnant girl out of the house, even though her grandmother did the same thing. Poor Camille, who never saw her children, who never became a mother. And this one is standing there, alive and well. Michael came up to Melissa, put his arm around her shoulders, kissed her on the head. "Hello, daughter. I realize it is not easy for you to accept me, and even more so to forgive me. Believe me, I can't forgive myself for." "Don't, Michael." Melissa's a little distant. "It's the past. It's just the way life turned out. There's nothing you can do about it. I don't blame you for anything. Will you come and live with Isabella, Molly's mom? I assure you she'll take you in like family. No, why would she? I have an apartment. I'll go home. Melissa saw that her father did not mind inviting her to his house, but was also relieved when he refused. But we'll still be relatives, won't we? I don't want to lose myself again. No, we won't be lost now. You're all I've got, except Molly and her family. I'd rather visit her, meet her nephews, my little relatives, and we'll see you again. In the meantime, I want to go home, have a rest, clean up after the hospital. No offense to me, please. Molly will take me home, won't she? Melissa got in her sister's car, and they drove off. You do hold a grudge against your father after all. Molly said, No, Molly, I really don't. And if I do, it's not for me, but for our mother, Camille. No matter what you say, he has his share of the blame for her absence. Yes, I suppose so, but I hadn't thought about it. Of course, for you, he's a daddy. He carried you in his arms, changed your diapers, took you to kindergarten, to school, married you, but for me, he's a man who abandoned my pregnant mother. That's what I knew from childhood. The word daddy means nothing to me, and now it's too late for me to adopt someone. I hope you understand and don't resent your father. Oh, really, Melissa? You're right. He's a daddy to me and a nobody to you, and yet we're sisters and twins. That's great. Yeah, that's what life is all about. Besides, the other reason I didn't accept his invitation was because of your foster mom. I mean, she probably wouldn't want to see me. You're her own daughter, and I'm your copy, but I'm a constant reminder of my husband's infidelity. I don't think she'd be too happy about it. Besides, my grandmother told me, and I can see from the pictures that I look more like my mom. No, I don't think Mom would be upset. She's a really nice person. Yeah, her dad cheating on her was a blow, but that was a long time ago. No, she's forgotten. I'm telling you the truth. How do we know what's in the minds of people, even those closest to us? Melissa got dark. Listen, sis, are you sure you should go home? I mean, you'll be all alone there. My husband and I have a rather large apartment. You will have a separate room where you will not be disturbed, but it will be easier to tidy up. I have everything you need. Everything will be perfect for you. We are almost one, aren't we? Molly said firmly. But think about it. What are you going to do there alone? In a couple of days we'll go together, and I'll help you clean it up. You know, you're probably right. I'm afraid to be alone. I don't know what's going to happen again. Thank you, Molly. I didn't want to come to your place because I was afraid of being cramped, but now that you mention it, what's there to be cramped about? We still have a lot to talk about, and it's a good time to start catching up on all the things we missed out on as kids.
Subscribe and click the bell. He often had nightmares. He wakes up in the night in a cold sweat. Something is troubling him. The boy gets out of bed, goes to the stairwell, looks around. No one's there. He walks down the stairs. It's business as usual. And when he gets outside, he sees that there's been an apocalypse. Everything's destroyed. The houses have been turned into piles of bricks. There's no one on the street. There's someone peeking around the corner. With some sixth sense, the boy realizes it's not a person. He jumps out of his seat and runs back into the entryway. But now there are only stairs. There are no walls. The boy screams, and at that moment he wakes up. Son, what's wrong? Mom's awake too. It was just a bad dream. He was still sitting on the bed, confused. It seemed like everything he'd just seen was true. Come on, get to bed for school tomorrow. The woman muttered. Okay. The boy agreed with her, although he didn't really want to do it. He went back to bed, fell asleep, and the dream seemed to go on. It was scary, but he couldn't wake up. The next day, Christopher got up in the morning, exhausted. He couldn't pull himself together. He really wanted to sleep, but the kid went to school anyway. He knew if he didn't, his parents wouldn't be happy. The family lived in an ordinary town. Christopher had a sister. The birth father was long gone. His mother lived with her new husband, who was the boy's stepmother. "Mom, are we going to take a little longer walk with the boys tonight?" asked the son in the evening. "What's the matter?" The woman looked at him. Oh, he just shrugged his shoulders. "I don't know what to say. All weekend, please, but not during the week." The woman was stern. "All right, we all don't like these lectures." He went out to the yard, told his friends that it wasn't going to work out today. They were meeting at one of the houses in their neighborhood. The young people there had taken over the basement. Now, when they studied already in the 8th grade, they couldn't smoke and drink beer. But back then, they had to walk around a lot longer to get the air out. "Then we'll sit here," showed Stephen to a bench in the yard. Great. No one argued with him. Why go anywhere when everyone lives nearby? There was no ringleader in the group. Everyone was on an equal footing. It was the 90s, so young people did what they could. "We'd go out on the weekend," the man would say. Of course, it was a favorite. If we were lucky, guys from another neighborhood would come over. We could wave. Stephen said, "Yeah, we'd have to get ready." Christopher remembered the last time the opponents had brass knuckles. All they could come up with was a rock for insulation. "Don't teach a scientist," his comrade told him. In those years, young people did not think of anything else. There was practically nowhere to go. All the circles ended in the afternoon, and in the evening the boys were left to themselves. They gathered together, discussed a plan of action, took money somewhere, bought cheap alcohol, drank it at construction sites or abandoned. "Hey, Christopher." One day, an older comrade came up to the guy. "Hi." Looked at him. It was Rick. He graduated 2 years ago, and now he was looking for intrepid youngsters. "Come on, let's step back. We need to talk." He knew Christopher was not a shy guy and could do a lot of things. Christopher looked back at his friends and followed his older comrade. Of course, it was a little scary because he knew what Rick was doing. But it was embarrassing in front of his friends if he didn't go. The young men rounded the corner of the building, and Rick looked around and handed Christopher 2 matchboxes. "What are these?" The boy did not understand then. "You don't know?" Rick winked at him. "I guess," Christopher told him. "Well, if you guess, you probably know what to do with it," smirked the older man. Roughly, Christopher quickly stashed what he had just been handed in his pocket. "You hand it over, you'll get some good money." There was a piece of paper that said who to hand it all over to. Okay, the boy walked back towards the school. He didn't look back at Rick. At first it was very scary, because Christopher was afraid that someone would see or find out what he was doing. But once, twice, 3 times, and then he felt at ease, because not only did he have good money, but he also hung around in circles with the older guys. Knew if anybody took offense, you could just tell them, and they'd stand up for him. "Christopher, are you coming or not?" Stephen called out to him, but he had to wait for the bell to ring and hand over what was in his pocket. "Wait a minute," the young man waved him away. "Listen, tell me, why have you been so different lately?" A friend came up to him. "Let me tell you everything later. It's just not the right time." The guy didn't want to share information with anyone because he was afraid that everything would come out. Over the weekend, they met up with Rick again. He handed him some matchbooks. "There's more than enough here." Christopher looked at the one. "I won't be in for a while, so if they ask, you can sell it," said Rick to him. "I hear you." They parted ways. Christopher came home. There were 2 boxes in his pocket. They were straight up igniting his pants all the way through. The boy knew that if his mother found these in his pants, nothing good would come of it. In the evening, he went for a walk. He met Stephen in the yard. "Listen, friend, I have something very important to tell you." Christopher came up to him. "Go ahead." A friend was always willing to listen. "Do you remember Rick who approached me at school?" he asked him. "Of course I remember," smiled Stephen. So Christopher began to tell him what was going on. "Do you want something from me?" Stephen stood. He was in complete shock. He had no idea that there was such a thing going on at the school. "Here, you can hide this at your house or something." He took the boxes out of his pocket. Wow, he opened one of them. "Close it, or you'll wake up." He kept looking around. He was afraid that someone might see them. "Listen, why don't we try it?" Stephen smiled. "I don't even know." "Then we'd have to invest the money," the guy shrugged. "All right, let's lay down." "It's not that expensive," said his friend. That afternoon, a group of guys gathered in their den. In theory, they knew how it was done, so it wasn't anything complicated. Christopher took a drag. He didn't feel anything like that. It even felt to him like normal cigarettes. Afterward, when the boys went home, they felt a little dizzy. And no matter what anyone says now, it seemed ridiculous. The boy came home, saying something, giggling. The mother suspected something wrong. She began to question her son, but he remained silent, said nothing. Then the next day, the woman called a policeman she knew and shared her suspicions with him. He offered to hold a preventive conversation on the topic that was worrying all parents now. But he also said that the mother should not warn anyone. Let the son not know, he would think it was a stranger to no one. And so it was agreed. In the evening, when Christopher came home, they had a policeman sitting in the kitchen. "Hello." I looked at him, and his knees were shaking. He now thought he had done the right thing when he gave Stephen the box. Passing Christopher, "I am waiting for you," the man told him. Christopher walked into the kitchen, sat down across from him. He didn't look up. He was really scared that he was about to start talking, and his mom and everyone else would find out what he was doing. "So, young man from the school has received a signal that you are doing the wrong things, and you need to have a preventive conversation with you. So here I am," said the man. "Was he writing something in his notebook?" "I didn't do anything like that," Christopher began to mumble. But then I thought, the more you get lost, the more they'll think of you. So he shut up. "I'm not accusing you of anything yet," the man in uniform smirked. "Then why did you come?" The boy didn't understand. The mother stood near him and saw that her son was not comfortable. "I told you, it's a preventive conversation. Everyone knows that there are a lot of illegal substances now. They are distributed among school children and other residents of our city. I just want you to know that if you suddenly get into a company where they do it, or even worse, start using or distributing, then nothing good awaits you in the future," said the policeman. I understood. Christopher shook his head. He really understood that it was very dangerous, and if he kept doing it, someone would find out or he would get caught. 2 days later, when they met Rick, we all told him so. And no amount of money, no amount of persuasion could make him keep doing it now. The boy wanted to finish 9 grades and leave school. But in the past, all parents were in favor of their child necessarily completing a full school course, that is, 11 grades, and then go to good educational institutions. "No, my dear, you study all the years, you will get a certificate. And when you turn 18, then, please, decide everything for yourself and do what you want," his mother told him. But why waste 2 years? Christopher didn't understand. "I think you will waste them that way if you even leave school." The mother was worried about her son. Now that Christopher had his own opinions, he often argued with his mother because their views were very different from each other. The young man was fascinated by computer technology. He was constantly collecting, disassembling, looking at how everything is organized, trying to do something new. When he was in his senior year of high school, he already realized that he could assemble and disassemble a computer, as well as fix it. "So maybe that's what you'll do with your life," his mother told him. "I haven't decided yet," he answered her. "It's just that I see you're good at it." She stood and watched her son at the table as he deftly went through the parts and put one to the other. "Yes, okay, I'll think about it," he promised his mother. He only had one friend left at school now. That was Stephen. Almost everyone from the yard had moved away. They'd gone to school. They talked lightly about the future, how and what would happen. Now we'll finish school and they'll take us to the army, Christopher said. So he served normally. We'll come back, then we'll start working, said Stephen. That's what they decided. After that, they started to think of something to do. There were a lot of ideas, but it was all wrong. They needed money for one thing and money to start another. They also needed equipment to buy. Then the guys threw some plans on a sheet of paper and decided to think about it later. And suddenly something would change, and they would have a down payment for their startup. And now it was time for exams, which were easily passed because the guys never had any problems with their studies. Only graduation was ahead. On this festive day, the mother was very worried. The suit was the dinner. She had the dress ready. And here her son is standing at the graduation. He is given a certificate. Now the school principal says farewell words that they are releasing the guys into free sailing, almost right before graduation. Christopher turned 18, so it was not far off to receive a summons to the military enlistment office. And it came. Now the guy had to pass a medical examination and then go to the army. At least they would send him somewhere not far away, said the mother, who was upset for the child. Don't worry as if I'm still a kid, Christopher told her. And you will always be little to me. His mother hugged him. Even though he didn't like all that tenderness, he didn't push her away. The day came when the guy was sent off to the army. Some acquaintances and friends gathered, and the next day he was on his way to the station. Son, right, his mother said to him and cried. I will, he told her, smiled, and entered the car. Christopher was not at all worried. It was not the first time he had encountered difficulties. He even wanted to know what would happen next, where he would arrive, who would meet him, and how things would be. Everything went well, just as the mother wanted. The son was sent not so far from home. When the oath was administered, she just took the 4:00 bus, and she was already at the location where Christopher was serving. Yes, at first it was difficult for the boy. He had to get into a new team. Everyone has their own habits, their own opinions. And of course, arguments with the old employees. Nobody canceled that. After 6 months of service, everything was normal. Christopher continued to serve. It was already time for demobilization. He missed home very much. When he went there, he was even worried. He went to a flower store, bought a bouquet for his mom. Hello, dear. A woman hugged him at the entrance. Mom, I'm so tired and I miss you. I want something homemade. He told her. Sure enough. Now off she went to the kitchen. That day and the next few were wonderful. I liked everything here. He remembered a lot of things, looking out the window. They used to run with their friends in this yard. And another mom, do you know where Stephen is now? He asked the woman after a week at home. How would I know? I don't keep track of him. Did she look at him? What so aggressively? Didn't understand the woman's mood. Nothing. She went to the kitchen. In fact, the woman had already gone to work for a day and thought that the son does nothing, but just sits at home. And yet the young man followed her into the kitchen. Christopher, you've been sitting at home for over a week now. Why don't you get a job somewhere? And she looked at him seriously. What are you starting? Get a job when you need one. He shook his head, realizing that everything was starting over. And when that time would come, she wondered. Mom, don't start. He went back to the room. They were not interested. The young man didn't want to work in a factory or for some uncle. He had a lot of ideas. He wanted to do his own thing. It was necessary to find Stephen, because Christopher was sure that the two of them could do a lot of things together. The next day, the young man got ready. He decided to go to Stephen, and if he couldn't find him, at least ask his parents where he was. Hello. He arrived at his friend's house. Oh, Christopher, hello. Stephen's mom hugged him. Where's my best friend? He asked her. And he went to the village to help his grandmother. said the landlady. And when will he be home? He asked. I don't even know. And you go to his place, you'll have a rest there. His mother dictated the address where his grandmother lived. Thank you. Christopher didn't mind seeing his friend. He went straight from here to the train station. He didn't bother to warn his mother. An adult already does what he wants. The trip only took about an hour. Then it was a few minutes' walk to the right house, and here the boy is already knocking on the window. He saw his friend, who pulled back the curtains, looked, and as if he could not believe that a friend had come to see him. What are you looking at? Open up. Christopher laughed. No way. Then Stephen shouted and disappeared through the window. A few seconds later, the gate opened, and a guy came out. Didn't you recognize me? Christopher asked his comrade. They hugged each other. How can you recognize how long we have not seen each other? The young man was happy. Invite me into the house, asked Christopher. Sure, let's go. Grandma just baked pies. They went into the yard and then into the house. They sat down at the table. The woman poured them tea, put in the center huge dishes with pies, wished them a pleasant appetite, and went behind a curtain into another room. Well, how's it going? Tell me. Christopher took a bite of the cake. Everything's fine. I'm waiting for you. Lots of plans. Stephen smiled. Well, here I am. Christopher spread his arms out. All right, let's get started. We just need to think about housing. With my parents do not want to live like that, complained Comrade. Great, and I wanted to talk to you about it. Christopher rejoiced. After all, two to rent a place is easier than one. Ugh, and I thought I could not afford it. Stephen exhaled. No, everything will be fine, assured his friend. That was the deal. The friends decided to spend a few days here in the village and then go to the city and start doing something. I'm so glad we haven't lost touch, Christopher said as they drove back to the city. It's okay. Stephen shook his head. He remembered from his childhood what an inventor and initiator Christopher was. I hope so. The boy agreed with him. Christopher arrived home. He thought his mother was going to throw herself at him and start asking him where he had been, why he hadn't warned her. But nothing of the sort happened. Did you go for a walk? Was all she asked when the young man entered the apartment. He didn't say anything. He went into the room, took out a sports bag, and started packing. That's a long way to go. Mom walked in the same way. We're from Stephen and decided to rent an apartment, he told her. Great. As if the woman was even happy. She went back into the kitchen. But all the while he was standing in the hallway, thinking that his mom would at least come out to him. Come on, shouted the one from the kitchen. He went to a friend, who had to ask an acquaintance who rented the apartment whether it is still there or already rented. Zdorova. Well, he asked Stephen. Everything is fine. The apartment is not yet rented, so you can move in right now, said the friend Christopher. Great. He smiled. They took some of Stephen's things and went to the place where they were going to live. After that, the friends sat down at the table to talk about what they wanted to do now. The guys came up with a very good idea with discs and audio cassettes. They were now calculating what they would need. Knowing that my uncle has a basement space, I don't think he needs it. We'll have to ask, Stephen said. If this works out, we'll have very little cost, said Christopher to a friend. And it did work out for the boys. The uncle gave them this little space in the basement. They bought, copied equipment, discs, paper. Everything was gonna work out, everything. And somewhere he took an old computer. He said he gave it to them cheap, but with God. They opened up and began to place ads wherever they could. On the third day, they got a very large order. Guys, hello. A respectable man came to them. Hello. The guys didn't expect this. They thought it would be a one-off. But to do it all at once, I don't know if your work is good or bad, but I have a very urgent order. The customer looked at the surprised guys. Are you talking? Christopher was the first to speak. I have several 1,000 discs. They all need to be processed in 3 days. He said that a few 1,000. Christopher grinned and looked at the equipment they had. I'll give you an advance payment. Anything you say. Just do it, please, the man asked. It was obvious that the matter was urgent. Okay, just let's discuss some points. He looked at his friend Christopher, who was still silent. That's it. What do you say? The customer was in agreement. After that, Christopher explained to him what and how. Good, and here is the money he took out of his pocket, a solid sum put on the table. Bring the discs and see you in 3 days. Christopher said goodbye to him. Have you been making noise for 3 days? Stephen jumped on him. What's the big deal? He didn't understand. You can't do it in a week, especially with our equipment. The comrade almost cried. Calm down. He left us so much money for them. We'll buy a normal machine. Spoke Christopher with knowledge. And if we fail? Stephen did not believe in his own strength. It'll be okay. We'll get through this, Christopher promised him. I don't know. The friend doubted. From that moment on, they began to work hard. They decided to work both day and night. At first one would go out, the other would sleep, then they would switch. On the 3rd day, they really had everything ready. The customer arrived. He was afraid that it would turn out like with the past performers. He had already given this order to others, but as time passed, when he arrived, he was simply told they couldn't do the job. Guys. He walked in without a greeting and looked at those who worked in this basement. Yes, hello. Come on in. Stephen was cheerful today because he realized that they had done a very difficult job. Did you make it in time? The man looked at them. Of course we did. I promised. Christopher stood up and pointed to the boxes that stood in the corner. First, the customer looked at everything, hummed, shook his head, and paid the rest of the money to the guys. And plus, he added a thank you for the speed. Bye. We'll definitely come to you again. He winked at the guys and called the workers to take the boxes away. Wow, Stephen looked at the money. There was enough here to pay several months' rent. And there was still a decent chunk left over. Well, let's get on with it. I held out my hand to him. Sure, laughed his friend and partner. Today the guys decided to relax a little, go to a cafe and celebrate the completion of a successful deal. Beer? Asked the bartender when they walked in. Thank you, nodded the guys and went to the table. Both of them were in high spirits. They sat and discussed further plans. Toward evening, more people started coming to the cafe. Soon there was not a single free seat left. At that moment, 2 girls entered the hall. They looked around since there were no seats, approached the bar. Wait, Stephen stopped them. He looked at the girls. He thought of something. It became interesting, who now he got up from the table and went to the bar. There he talked to the girls about something. They laughed, and then he and the guy came back to their table. Hi. They looked at Stephen. One took a seat next to the topic, and the other sat down with Stephen. Saw that there was no seat available for them. So that's why he offered to join us, the guy explained to his friend. I see. Until then, Stephen could not understand how it had happened so quickly. Introductions. I'm Sophia, and this is my girlfriend Camille, said one of the girls. Nice to meet you. You already know me. And this is my friend Stephen. Introduced him Christopher. Well, maybe we'll have a beer too. The girls looked at each other. Sure, we're having a party tonight. The friends told them about their deal. Wow, you could tell they were interested. After that, they went for a walk around the city, and when they said goodbye, the guys invited the girls to visit. They'd promised to come the very next day in the rented apartment of the guys. There were 4 people sitting in the kitchen. How about a game of cards and a couple on a couple? Stephen asked. Why not? I'm with Camille, said Christopher and winked at her. I agree. The girl smiled back and blushed. She liked the guy. Back then at the cafe, they were dealt the cards and the game began. Guys and girls were laughing, saying something. It was clear that Stephen and Sophia also liked him. In the evening, the friends separated. Each went to see the girl home. When they came home, they shared their impressions. The next day after work, the company gathered again. It went on like this every night. "Girls, why are we all going back and forth with you? Move in with us," said Stephen after 2 months of acquaintance. "What if you don't mind?" Camille was looking at Christopher. So Stephen and Sophia started living in one room, and Christopher and Camille in the other. At first, everything was very good, friends working together, girlfriends studying together, and doing everything at home together. But after 2 years of living together, the girls started telling their boyfriends to move out. Everyone wanted something different. "We're gonna live like this for a long time. We need to start a family," Camille told Christopher in the room. "You realize it's going to be a strain on our budget." Her boyfriend convinced her otherwise. "I can't do that." Sophia doesn't want to either. The girl took offense. The guys went on about their business. But as time goes on, things change. And what they were doing was no longer in demand. Now orders were coming in, but they were many times less. Accordingly, the income from it was small. Once I got a call from a friend who lived in another city. It was not far away, and it was many times smaller than where the guys lived and worked now. "Hi," Christopher greeted him. "Listen, I decided to call you because I know you're good at this." Started telling John why he was calling, but he didn't understand anything yet. Christopher decided to open a repair shop here. Computers, cell phones, other appliances. "You're good at that." Spoken with enthusiasm. "Friend, so do I. What do you want?" "I'm starting to get a little more up to speed." Christopher, "Come, we'll work together. We don't have anything like this yet, and people break things all the time." There was so much enthusiasm in the young man's voice, I'd have to think about it. Christopher asked for some time. "Yes, of course. I can't stand you," agreed the friend. After this conversation, the guy thought about it. Yes, it was a great option to make money, but it was necessary to leave here in a small town. What to do? He didn't know. "Camille, I need to talk to you," he said to the girl. "Go ahead." She looked at him. "Remember you said we should separate. I want to offer you an option." He told her everything that his friend had suggested to him, that he go to some backwater. She cringed. "There you can rent an apartment cheaper, and the income will be decent," he persuaded the girl. "I don't know. I don't want to." She almost stomped her feet. "Well, think about it. I'll probably definitely go." He went to Stephen to tell him the same thing. His friend didn't support him either. He said that if he wanted to go, he could leave and he could stay here. Christopher didn't realize that he was the only one in his head thinking that everything would work out, and what difference did it make what city to live in. 2 weeks later, he called John, said that he had decided everything and would soon come to look for an apartment for him. The friend was happy, agreed, and said he was looking forward to it. "Christopher, I'm pregnant." In the evening, Camille surprised him. "I'm glad." He smiled. "What to do now?" "I wasn't going to go anywhere." She was almost crying. "Why didn't you say so before? I thought we were together." He sat down in front of her. "I don't." She shrugged her shoulders. "Are you going to go?" He looked her in the eyes. What to say now? She couldn't accept the thought. Stephen regretted that he would have to part with his friend, but the latter had already decided everything. They saw their friends off to the train station, but all for now. "Come and visit," Christopher said, and shook his friend's hand. The girls said goodbye too. John, as promised, rented them an apartment, so now the couple had already arrived there. They settled in quickly. Christopher and John started working, just as the friend had said they would. There were tons of people. Everyone had something broken, and they were carrying the workshop to them. The money was very good. Camille stayed home. She was getting ready to be a mother. What's there to do in this little town? Not even anywhere to go. The girl was always teaching. "Nothing. Now you will give birth. Then we will find something to do," Christopher reassured her. He took care of Camille as best he could, bought what she asked for. He did almost everything himself. When the due date came, the girl went to the hospital. There were no problems. The labor went perfectly. 5 days later, the happy father met them at the hospital. "Why don't you propose to me?" Camille asked him one night. "Why do you feel so bad?" He looked at her in surprise. "We have a child. It's time to become a family," she replied. "No, I don't want to. Why do I need an extra stamp in my passport?" He answered her easily. "Then you don't love me." She folded her arms across her chest and turned away from him. "Please don't start." He didn't like all these concerts. Right now, Camille was at home with the baby. Christopher was working. The daughter was already 5 years old when Camille started talking about the wedding again. "Why are you bothering me with this proposal?" The young man was annoyed. "I want a wedding," she told him. "I don't." He was getting even more annoyed. "Then I'm going to leave." She gave him a wait and see look. "What do you expect? That I'll talk you out of it or run out to buy a ring?" He grinned. They'd been fighting a lot lately. Camille had been the one to stir it up. And now that she said she was leaving, Christopher didn't mind. "That's it, I'm going to my mom's and you won't see the baby." She turned and walked away. "What makes you think that?" Was surprised by the young man. He realized that the girl was trying to hurt him. "And what have you done for her?" Camille stopped, realizing what had hurt him. "Did you, Christopher, have a right to ask that question?" From the moment she was born, he had sat by Evelyn's crib almost every night, putting her to bed. Then, when her teeth started teething, he rocked her in his arms. Then he took the girl to kindergarten, practiced, taught her to read, count, write. Camille at this time not only did not work anywhere, but she disappeared all day at the girlfriend's, which she had here appeared, or at the beauty parlor. "All of this is my last word." She went into the bathroom and slammed the door. Christopher went to his daughter's room. He just wanted to talk to her. Of course, if there had been no Evelyn, this breakup would not have been so painful. Now the father walked over to Evelyn, beckoned her over and hugged her. "Daddy, what's wrong? Why are you so sad?" she asked him. "Your mom and I had a fight and now she wants to take you away to Grandma's house." "Don't worry, sometimes that happens between adults. But you and I will always be in touch." He pulled her even tighter against him. "Good." The girl cried. She felt sorry for her daddy and mommy. The very next day, Camille with her belongings and daughter left. Christopher was at work at that moment. In the evening, when he came back and found no one, he felt very bad. He went down to the yard, went to the store, got himself a beer. Now he sat in the kitchen, poured the amber liquid into a glass and drank. There was nothing to be sad about except his daughter. He drank, felt very tired, got up and went to bed. No one was bothering him today. There was no need to go anywhere, to do anything. So he just closed his eyes and fell asleep. The young man began to live alone. It might have seemed difficult at first. You had to cook, go to work, clean. But soon he got used to it. Now he had a lot of free time. He began to work not only in the workshop, but also at home. "Hi," John greeted him at work. "How are you?" Christopher asked him. "I'm fine. Come and visit tonight." It was Saturday. John and his wife were going to stoke the bathhouse. The guy had long dreamed of a private house and had finished building it about 6 months ago. John was most proud of his bathhouse. It turned out to be big. That's where they gathered. Of course, there is nothing to do at home anyway. And you want to talk to someone. Christopher agreed. They had worked today and decided that they would go straight from here to the store and go to John. "What are we drinking?" The friend looked at Christopher. "Beer, what else do you drink in a bathhouse?" He was already putting glass bottles in the basket. "Great." The man agreed with him. They arrived while John's wife was cooking something in the house. The young men flooded the bathhouse, brought water and firewood, and decided that they would also make a kebab. Well, here came the treat. A girl came to the bathhouse. "Thank you, my dear." John sat his wife on his knee. "Now Jenna will also come," said the girl. "Good." Christopher winked at his host. It had been about 6 months since Camille had broken up with him, But Christopher didn't want to meet or date anyone yet. "Aha," he replied. Jenna burst in like a hurricane. She started talking from the door, laughing. "Let's get to know each other. This is my friend Christopher," said to her John. "Hi." She smiled at him. Christopher did not like such animals, and the girl was not to his taste. All evening they talked. He even walked her home. But he couldn't say he wanted to keep talking to her. Hi. He saw her the next day. A message from Jenna on social media writing. He told John at the time, "What is writing and who is interested in that one?" Jenna emotionally said the young man. "So answer," suggested his friend. "I don't want to." Christopher waved his head. "Okay, it's up to you." Did not pry into the affairs of a friend John. The next day, when Christopher was going to work, he again received the same message as yesterday from the girl. And again, he didn't react to it. And again, he didn't react to it. "How's it going?" a friend at work asked. "Nothing new." He shrugged. An hour later, Jenna came to their workshop. John had gone somewhere else, so as much as Christopher didn't want to, he had to approach the girl. "You can look at my phone." She handed him the device in her hand. Now he spun it around, pressed some buttons, realized she'd made up a reason to come over. It was just the sound. He gave her the phone back. "Thank you. How much do I owe you?" Jenna tried to make conversation. Not at all. The guy realized he hadn't done anything at all. "Why don't you want to communicate with me?" she asked directly. "Who told you that?" He wasn't looking at her, minding his own business, and I could see she wasn't going to leave. "Oh, Jenna, hi. John's back." "Hi. Come visit tonight." She called them over to John. "Okay, what's the holiday?" asked the young man. "Nothing. We'll just sit around." She smiled. "It's Monday," said Christopher with a chuckle. "So?" The girl didn't understand. "Let's wait until the weekend then." Then said John, "Okay." She looked at Christopher one more time and went to your place. "She did." The guy guessed. "Yes, she did," Christopher said grudgingly. "What's wrong with her?" "She's a nice girl." His friend didn't understand. "That's it. I don't want to talk about it." Christopher got up and went to the store to buy something to eat. Okay, John stayed out of his way. Jenna kept up with him. She texted Christopher every day to say hello. They met when they went to John's house to visit. So far, Christopher hadn't paid any attention to her. One day, the girl went to the store, and on her way back, she saw Christopher. I yelled hi. He came up to her hi. "Help me carry the bag," she asked him. "Come on," he agreed out of politeness. When they reached the girl's house, she thanked the guy. "Why don't you come over for a visit?" she asked him. "No," was the unequivocal answer. "Let's go and talk, drink tea." "What, are you going to run away from me like this?" she called out to him. Good. He himself at that moment does not know how he agreed and why he went. Jenna inwardly rejoiced. He's definitely not going anywhere now. Today they had tea and talked. Tomorrow come over after work for dinner. She invited him when she went out to see him off. Well, we'll see. He put on his sneakers, said goodbye, and left. At work, he didn't say anything to John in the morning and went home in the evening. "Are you coming over?" Jenna texted him. "I'm sorry, but I can't make it tonight." Christopher texted her back. "I've been working so hard, cooking, it's all for nothing." Even in the message, it was obvious that she was offended. "Okay, I'll be there soon." Christopher thought to himself that in addition to having a delicious meal, he would also spend the evening with an interesting person. Yesterday, when they talked, he realized that Jenna was a smart girl, knew a lot of things, and he liked that. Again, they sat in the girl's kitchen and talked. "Would you like some wine?" she asked him. "No beer," he asked in reply. "I'll look in a moment." She opened the refrigerator. "No, only champagne and wine." She looked at the young man. "Okay, let's have wine." He agreed. "We can go to the store," Jenna suggested. "Would you go with me?" asked her boyfriend. She didn't care what she did, as long as she was near him. Then let's go. They went to the hallway, put on their shoes, and left the apartment. Not half an hour later, the young people were sitting in the room on the couch in front of the TV and drinking beer. Jenna was telling something, and they were laughing. At some point, their faces were so close that the girl couldn't stand it. "Let's kiss," she told him. Christopher did not answer anything. He put his arms around the girl, and their lips merged in a kiss. An hour and 2 hours passed, and they kept kissing and kissing. "Are you a good kisser?" Christopher said to her then. "Are you too?" She lowered her eyes. "Stay." "No, not tonight." He looked at his watch and started to get ready to go home. "Okay, will you come tomorrow?" she asked, but she wasn't hoping for anything. "Yes," he nodded. When Christopher walked out of the apartment, Jenna leaned with her back against the door and lit the sea. It was the first time a girl had ever pursued a young man on her own, and she had succeeded. The next day, she got ready, cooked dinner, bought beer, wine. Who knows what he'd want? And the young man came, as promised. "Hi." Jenna was very shy. She couldn't even approach him. "You've been waiting." He realized by the aroma coming from the kitchen. "Yep," she nodded. "Tonight went the same way as yesterday. Why don't you stay in tonight?" Jenna asked him. "You know, you and I have just started hanging out. Let's hang out for a while," smiled Christopher. "Okay," agreed the girl, because she didn't want to spoil the already very fragile relationship. The next day, Christopher wrote that he would not be able to come. Jenna tried to ask why, but he never explained anything. By the weekend, she texted that she was going to visit John. To everyone, he told them that he was invited too. They met again and went home together in the evening. And tonight he didn't even have to be persuaded. He stayed with the girl. Of course, they slept in separate rooms, and when Jenna woke up in the morning, she didn't know whether to approach him or not. What to do? Embarrassed, like she was 13 years old, the girl went to the kitchen, made coffee, then she made breakfast. When it was ready, she put it on the coffee table and went to wake up the young man. "Hi, everybody." She sat down on the couch where he was sleeping. "Good morning. How long has he been wiping his eyes? You should be off to work by now." Jenna knew that guys worked without a day off, so she woke him up. "Yeah, I'm getting up now," he said. "I made you breakfast." Jenna blushed for some reason, embarrassed. "Thank you. I'll go to the kitchen now." Christopher got up from the couch. He walked down the hall, and Jenna noticed that he was somehow skidding to the right side. He washed his face, had breakfast, told Jenna he would stop by again after work and left. She was happy about it. She couldn't believe that they were actually starting a relationship. The girl got everything ready again. She had the day off today, so there was plenty of time. She waited for Christopher and wondered what they would do tonight. "Let's go to the movies." She met him on the doorstep of her apartment. "Well, if you want to have dinner, we'll go," he agreed. And they all did. And after they returned from the theater, sat for a while, shared their impressions of the film, and then went to bed again. For a whole week, Christopher went to Jenna's, stayed with her, but they slept in separate rooms. "Why don't you come to bed with me?" The girl asked him one night. "I don't know. Are you going to name it?" "You don't lie down," he answered. "But I'm calling it tonight," she said, and her cheeks flared again. Good. They were now sitting in the kitchen, and as Christopher got up and walked down the hall, Jenna noticed again that he was skidding to the right. At first, the girl paid no attention to it and didn't say anything to him. But about a month after they started living together, Christopher admitted that his right ear really hurts. Sometimes he even feels like he can't hear it. "Why don't you go to the doctor?" Jenna asked him. "Do you know these doctors? They don't say anything, but they give you prescriptions, and nothing really helps." He waved her off. "Well, at least let them do an exam. Figure out why it's happening," she told him. "No, I'm definitely not going to the doctors," the young man replied. "All right. As you wish," she shrugged. But when after another short time Christopher came home, he told Jenna a terrible story. At work, he wanted to listen to music, but since their workshop was not alone, he put on headphones, and when the music started, Christopher could hear with his left ear, but not with his right. The guy thought it was the headphones, so he took them off, switched them around. But they turned out to be fine. So he plugged his left ear and asked John to say something to him. The young man could see from his lips that his friend was talking, but he couldn't hear what he was saying. "Christopher, how could you? I told you to see a doctor." Jenna was afraid for his health. She called the pay clinic they had in town and wanted to make an appointment to see Laura. But when the receptionist listened to her complaints, she said that it is necessary not to see a lawyer, but a neurologist. "Well, then write me down to a neurologist." She dictated Christopher's first and last name and phone number. When he came home from work in the evening, the girl announced to him that he was not going anywhere tomorrow, but was going to a doctor's appointment. She had already made an appointment for him, and he would be expected there. "Why did you do that? Are you sure I need this?" he said to her then. She answered confidently, and she didn't want any more talk. The next day, Christopher went to the doctor. Jenna was waiting for him at home, worried. He dialed her number and told her that the neurologist had sent him for an MRI, saying that he was 90% sure he had a tumor in his head. Of course, this news really scared the girl. While Christopher was getting home, she called the clinic and made an appointment for an MRI. Naturally, the doctor's words really scared the young man. He agreed to undergo all the procedures after everything was done and the report was received. Christopher and Jenna sat in her kitchen and both were in shock. The MRI showed that Christopher really had a tumor in his head and urgently needed surgery. Since the young man's residence registration was in the city where he was born and lived, they went to the hospital there and checked in. The doctor said that the operation could be done under a quota free of charge. Christopher began to take tests, and 3 days before the operation he went to the hospital. Jenna went home. She took all the phone numbers she needed to find out how the surgery went. All day long, Jenna and Christopher talked on the phone. He would tell her what he was doing, how he was being prepped, what tests he was taking, and everything else. The girl couldn't be home alone, so she went to a close friend of hers. "Don't you want to go to a fortune teller?" she asked her. "Why?" "I don't understand, Jenna. Just maybe she could tell you something." The friend saw how worried the girl was and how you wanted to help her, calm her down. "Do you know anyone?" the girl asked her. "Yes, I do." I nodded my head. "Well, okay, come on," agreed Jenna. They arrived at the woman's house. She asked for a picture and started talking. Jenna listened to her and realized it was all true. But at some point, the woman looked up at her and said that Christopher would die during the operation. That was something the girl couldn't accept. She snatched the picture from her and just walked out of the apartment. Ran home. The girlfriend saw all this, followed her. But Jenna didn't want to see anyone right now. She needed to be alone. The day of the surgery, she was on pins and needles. She wouldn't let go of her cell phone. She was pacing from corner to corner, and she didn't know what was going on. And when 800 hours passed, she knew she was going to be out of surgery. By that time, she started calling all the phones, but some were busy, some did not pick up. One number kept getting disconnected. Jenna could not find a place and realized that now it was too late. She could not go there. All night, Jenna did not sleep. Then in the morning, when it was very early, her phone rang. She saw that it was the number of the surgeon who had done Christopher's operation. "Hello," she answered. "Hello, Jenna," he said to her. Yes, she wished he would tell her something faster. "Please come over. I need to talk to you," he replied. "Tell me what's wrong with Christopher." That was the only question she cared about at that moment. "Please come. I'll tell you everything." He sounded like he was pitying her or something. "Can you at least tell me what condition he's in?" She was already crying. "I don't have time for this. When you get here, I'll tell you everything and show you." He hung up. Jenna started looking at the bus schedule. She was packing very fast. She still had 2 hours to go. On the bus, she looked out the window and was afraid that now she was not following a living person. The fortune teller's words that he should die on the operating table came to mind. And somehow it all matched up. The girl arrived at the hospital. She went in to see the surgeon. He was sitting at the table, and he wouldn't look at her. So we told him before the surgery that the facial nerve might be affected. And it was. He also stopped talking. Jenna stood around the table. She knew she was going to pass out. "Doctor, well, speak up. Don't be silent anymore." She couldn't take it. During the 8-hour surgery, he had a stroke on the 5th hour. We had to do a second operation. His heart stopped. "Everything is fine now, but your young man is paralyzed on his right side," the surgeon said. "Where is he? Can I see him? What is his condition?" Jenna began to fumble and realized at some point that that was it. Now and then she remembered nothing. She woke up to the smell of ammonia. The doctor was sitting on the floor with her head in his lap. "Don't worry about it. His condition is stable and serious. He's in intensive care now," the doctor said. "Can I see him?" Jenna said quietly. "Of course, the nurse will show you now," calmly spoke the man. As they walked up to the 4th floor, Jenna thought that maybe Christopher would be uncomfortable that she would see him like this, and he wouldn't want her to watch or something. Her legs were shaking, and her whole body was tense. She was put on booties, a cap, gloves, a robe. And when they brought her in, the tears just rolled out of her eyes. "Talk to him. He can hear you," the nurse told her. And Jenna took his hand and just couldn't get any words out because she knew if she did, she would just start sobbing. Christopher was lying on the bed. He was hooked up to a ventilator. There were also various small tubes sticking out of his arms and everywhere else. After standing there for a moment, she realized she couldn't be here anymore. Out. And then in the corridor she fainted again. "Don't be so worried," the nurse told her. "All right." The girl walked out of the hospital on woozy legs. One thing was for sure, he was alive. And Jenna knew for sure that he would live on. Now every day she would arrive at the hospital in the morning and leave in the evening. At first, while he was in the ICU, Jenna didn't do anything. Just sometimes they'd let her in there. She talked to the person she loved. And then when Christopher was moved to the ICU, Jenna would visit him. She helped him get out of bed, walk the halls. After he was taken off the ventilator, a tube was inserted into his throat. He breathed through it for a while. It was hard, but the girl loved him so much that all the heaviness faded into the background. Christopher could not walk, could not move his arm, and could not speak, because after the tube was taken out of his neck, all the air went out through that hole. You had to cover it with your hand to say anything. Mostly he whispered, but when he tried to say something, it sounded like Darth Vader from Star Wars. He also couldn't close his right eye because his facial nerve was hit. When a month had passed, he was discharged home. Jenna arrived at the hospital. She picked up her favorite person from there. He was in diapers. He couldn't move around on his own. On his legs, his arm wouldn't move at all. His eye could see, but he couldn't blink all the time. The girl brought him home. She knew she had to go to rehab soon. She dropped everything and was only there for him. "Christopher, you and I will be going to rehab soon," she told him. The girl did everything the hospital told her to do. They took pills, gave her some shots. They took a cab to the rehabilitation center, but it did not take them further than the barrier, and Jenna had to carry the young man on her own. She carried him, and they were assigned a room where they had to live together. Every day, Christopher was taken to different procedures, and he really felt better. And when they were discharged after 2 weeks, Jenna took all the recommendations of the doctors. She was given a lot of methodical literature, which described different types of massage, facial articulation, and other procedures. She wasn't going to stop with what she was doing now. When they arrived home, they practiced Christopher on a daily basis. They would say different proverbs, say letters to develop the speech apparatus. Afterward, ideally, they would walk on a bench. But since Jenna didn't have a bench at home, she put a ribbon on the floor, and Christopher had to walk on that tape. The girl took him everywhere, back at the rehab center. The doctor who worked with Christopher advised Jenna to get disability. She found out everything. She gathered all the documents, took the young man there, and they got a group. Now, although Christopher did not work, but some money fell on his card every month. In summer, she left her job and got a job in a health center, which was in Sosnovyj Bor, and took Christopher there with her. Fresh air and exercise had a favorable effect on the young man's condition. So a year passed. By this time, Christopher was already walking on his own. They had almost completely developed his arm. If before it was hanging like a whip, now he could move it, but only the hand remained a problem. Also, Christopher started to speak, but only the eye was a problem. "Good morning, my love. How are you feeling?" Jenna asked him every morning. "Good morning. Fine." He hugged her then. When they arrived from the rehab center, Christopher turned to her and told her, as best he could, that he loved her. Those were the most important words she wanted to hear from a young man. Now that things were more or less working out for him, they were sitting in the kitchen, talking about something. And suddenly, we all took Jenna's hand. "Would you marry me?" he asked her. "Of course," she answered, not doubting anything. "Then you'll be the first person I say those words to." He smiled. Jenna was happy. She just didn't know how to put it into words. "Mom, I'm marrying Simeon," called the girl that same night to her. "Why do you need that invalid?" her mother told her. "You don't understand anything. I love him more than anything in the world. I don't need anyone but him," she said. "Jenna, think 100 times about marrying him," her mother warned her. "I don't have to think about it. I've been ready for it for a long time." The girl didn't listen to anyone. Many friends condemned her that she threw all her strength to restore the young man, said that he was not suitable for her and everything else. But she did not listen to anyone, and when they decided to make a wedding, they just applied. And on the appointed day they came, signed, congratulated each other, and the two of them went to celebrate it all. "I love you very much," pressed Jenna against him. She was ready to be always by his side and never go anywhere. "And you are the love of my life," he told her. They were happy until Jenna got pregnant. When she informed Christopher about it, he was overjoyed with the news. As long as she was working, she was fine. But when she went on maternity leave, and there was practically no income at all, the family began a small scandal. The pension that Christopher received was not enough for anything at all, and it needed a lot. "Are you not going to do anything?" the girl asked her husband. "What do you want me to do?" he asked in reply. "I don't know. You're a man, can't you think of anything?" She was almost crying. "You see, I can't." He was lying on the couch. "Can I? My stomach's churning, and I have to do something and earn money somewhere." The girl was crying. After Jenna gave birth, it was decided that she would go to work and Christopher would stay home with the baby. How can you trust him with a small child? I told her mother off. "Mom, he's a father. He understands everything and knows what to do. Especially he already had a little daughter," said the girl to the woman. "I don't know. If something happens, then blame yourself. You can't fix anything," she told her. "All right, moms, that's enough. I have my own head on my shoulders." Lately, Jenna had become very irritable. Not only did she have a hormonal breakdown, she had to run home every 2 o'clock to feed the baby. Work was taking longer than usual. Christopher didn't just sit at home either. When Emily was still a baby, after Jenna fed her, she would just go to bed. And now that she was 5 months old, she needed to be held in her arms, facing forward all the time. The little girl was realizing the world. Why were the dishes not washed at home again? She'd come in irritated from work. "I'm with the baby all day." "What dishes?" Christopher told her. "And I'm tired all day at work. I'm just trying to make sure there's some income in the house," Jenna yelled at him. It was clear to both of them that they were both tired, but there was no way they could communicate that to each other. Soon after that, when Emily started kindergarten, Christopher would take her in the morning and bring her back in the evening. Yeah, he made Jenna's life easier, but she wasn't idle either. Sometimes she worked Monday through Friday. She worked weekends so she could get double pay, which meant a bigger paycheck. "Why are you sitting on your phone again?" she said to herself. "I can't even sit on my phone anymore." I looked at her. "I don't know. I can't do it anymore. I'm tired of this life. All my nerves are shot," Jenna replied. She would go to the bathroom, close herself up, and sit there, sometimes crying. She really didn't know what to do. Soon Christopher figured out a way for them to make money from the comfort of their own home. They began to make it all a reality. "I'm off to work in the morning," Jenna said. Christopher was taking his daughter to daycare. Jenna was on her way to work, and now she was doing what Christopher had come up with and working in parallel. Money began to appear in the family. Along with it, expensive appliances, computer, TV, laptop, and everything else. The family could afford more now, and Jenna seemed to settle down. But there was more and more work to do. And now it wasn't enough that she was working hard during the day and moonlighting, but there were still things to do at night. "I can't take it anymore. I'll go crazy soon." She was lying next to her husband. He didn't seem to have any problems at all. He slept well at night. He could do it during the day. One day, Jenna received a call from the employment center and was told that one of the organizations required a worker on a quota for a place. Of course, she grasped this information as a straw. Again, she gathered all the documents, came home. "Christopher, I found you a job. Here's the paperwork. Go apply." She handed him a file of papers. Yes, perhaps with this the girl stressed her husband, but she did not know how to do otherwise. All people lived like this. Yes, they pay pennies there. He told her. So what? It's a long service. They'd been together for a few years, and Jenna didn't understand why things had changed so much and why do I need seniority. Christopher didn't understand. All people work. Why do you think you're so special? The girl didn't get it. Now that her daughter was older, Christopher had to do something with her. But on the weekends, they had to take Emily to a singing class, and I had to do something to keep her entertained. Jenna was torn. She cooked at home. Then she'd go out with her daughter, and then she had to go to work. I can't. She came home and lay down on the couch. Get some rest, Christopher said calmly. Good for you to talk. What are we going to eat? She grinned. We can live without frills. He was sure of his words. Lately, Jenna realized that they had drifted apart. She dialed her friend's number. Hi, she told her. Come and visit. After the greeting, her friend called her. I will. She packed up the department and they left the house together. While visiting, the girl could exhale a little. In the back of her mind, she remembered that she had feelings for Christopher, and as strong as before. But housework, work, and everything else. So exhausting that she wanted nothing more. Did you go through the store? A friend was wondering. Sure. Displayed Jenna a bottle of wine on the table. That's good. We'll rest now, said the girlfriend. Here, visiting lapdog. Jenna could relax. She was not thinking about anything. The daughter was busy with her friend's daughter. They were about the same age. And the girls were sitting in the kitchen talking. You look very tired, Alina said. I know that myself. Jenna realized that if before she always had her nails painted, eyes painted, hair styled, then now she didn't care about that. A ponytail on her head, nothing at all on her hands. Go on vacation, suggested Alenka. I can't. Shook her head Jenna. They could sit up till late at night. And then Jenna and her daughter would drive home. Christopher was already asleep. She developed, washed her face, and lay down next to him. Where was it yesterday? He asked in the morning. You know Elena didn't have a rash. Now I had a headache. How do I know all this? Christopher answered it all. That's it. I don't want to talk anymore, wrinkled Jenna. She had finally poured boiling water into her mug and was now trying to take a sip of the scalding drink. "What else don't you want?" He was kind of cocky. "Christopher, please, I'll be right out, doing the dishes and vacuuming." She asked him, "What if I don't feel like it?" He wasn't acting like he always does. "You know, when you needed help, I did everything, whether I wanted to or not." She would never have told him that, but now he's really pissed her off. "And nobody asked you to." Those were the most hurtful words Christopher ever said to his wife. "Well, you didn't say no once." She came over because she felt like she might cry. "Did you misunderstand?" Apparently, he realized he said the wrong thing. And now he was trying to get out of it. "I'm going to work. Can you feed Emily when she wakes up?" She turned around and pretended to be busy. "Will you be long?" Christopher asked her as he followed Jenna down the hall. "I don't know," she shrugged. Good, he wanted to kiss her. But Jenna was already out. She couldn't show anyone her weakness. No, she's strong. She's got a baby. There's a mom to help. And there's Christopher, who has a hard time too. She wiped her tears, exhaled, and moved on. Jenna arrived at work. There was a lot to do. Today was a small children's party. The script was ready. It was left to hide the tasks that were meant for the kids. Jenna did everything. She knew that in 3 o'clock it would be over. When the kids arrived, Jenna was already in costume. She was smiling, taking everyone along with her. It was a lot of fun. The kids were laughing. They ran, played, and danced. At the very end, Jenna put on a show for the kids, after which everyone started to disperse, and the presenters cleaned up what was left after the party. But that was it. And now home. She looked around the room and went to change. She went up to her office, changed, and was ready to go out, while she said goodbye to the watchman who had just come in. Jack asked tiredly, But that's okay," smiled Jenna. "Okay, have a happy journey so far." He looked and smiled. "Thank you." It was nice to have a lot of people respecting her around here. She went outside, walked down the porch, and went to the gate. "Excuse me," she heard from across the parking lot. Yes, she turned and saw a very handsome man heading in her direction. She'd seen him at the party today. He was picking up one of the kids. "I'm sorry to be like this, but I didn't know how to meet you," he told her. "Why would you want to meet me?" She didn't understand a thing. She liked him. He didn't hide it. "Good. Why don't you drive me home?" Jenna looked at the car from which the stranger had gotten out a few minutes ago. She didn't really want to take public transportation. Of course, gladly, he took the bags from her hands and led her to Robert's car. He got behind the wheel. Jenna looked at him. "A beautiful name, just like you." He tried to compliment her. "Everyone, let's go already." She sighed. "Maybe we can stop for a meal on the way. Are you tired from work?" "I guess I offered my wife." "Good." Jenna at that moment does not know why she agreed, because her husband and daughter were waiting for her at home. "Wow, and I thought you would refuse me." Robert was surprised and smiled. "But I agreed." The girl laughed. "That's good." They stopped near a small restaurant. They went in. Robert ordered something. Jenna couldn't decide for a long time. She hadn't eaten anything since this morning, so now she wanted everything. Finally, she did it. Now they both waited for the order to arrive. Silent. "How about some wine?" Robert suggested. "You're driving, aren't you?" She was surprised. "I'm here for you to relax," he explained. "I could use a glass," agreed Jenna. Then Robert made a sign to the waiter. He came over and took the order. "I'm so uncomfortable sitting here with you," Jenna said. "And for some reason I felt ashamed of myself." "Why?" He didn't understand. "My husband and child are waiting for me at home, and I'm sitting here with another man, drinking wine." She smiled. "What's the big deal? I'm just here with a good friend to unwind a little." Of course, that wasn't true at all. "Who's at your house?" She asked the question because it had been plaguing her since she had met Robert today. "Cat," he shrugged. I don't know what else to say. Isn't there a wife? She asked in complete seriousness. What makes you think I have one? Robert didn't understand. What do you mean? Whose baby did you pick up today? She admitted to him that she'd seen it. It's his nephew, his sister's son, he reassured her. At that moment, their order was brought to them. They started to eat. Either Jenna had not eaten in a long time, or the food here was simply divine. She was alive, and at this point, she let out a groan, rolled her eyes. Do you always eat like this? Robert laughed. Oh, sorry. The girl realized what she had done wrong. No, it's nice to look at it. He smiled. You never told me why you came up to me. They knew each other, just a little. But Jenna felt with him as if she had known him for a long time. What do you mean you didn't tell me because you liked it? Me and the guys were at your place once, and I noticed you back then. He said that and stopped smiling. What did this girl notice so sadly? A few sips of wine on an empty stomach had done the trick. She was relaxed and open-mouthed. You have a husband, kids, and I wanted us to make something work, he told her. What's wrong with you? She's tense. No, it's okay. We'll be friends. He reached out and touched her. After they ate, Robert paid and they went to the car. Should we go for another drive? He asked Jenna. No, I have to go home. She shook her head. Okay, can I have your cell phone? He asked and glanced at the girl. Yes, she answered calmly. They drove to the house where Jenna lived. She got out of the car. All right, promised his wife, and did not leave while on stage, walked into the driveway. It was nice to have someone else paying attention to her. The girl went into the house. Everything was the same there. No one had done anything. Christopher was lying on the couch again. As usual, she dropped her things and walked to the kitchen. Emily was sitting at the table drawing something. I'm hungry, she said, now turned Jenna to the stove, and thought to herself that her husband could at least do something. After she got everything done, fed the baby and bought her up and put her to bed. She wanted to talk to Christopher, walked into the room. Have you been drinking on the job? He asked, and he didn't take his eyes off the screen of his phone. Stopped at a restaurant afterward to eat. Had a glass, didn't make a deal. What, she wasn't alone? That's all. Did you sit there alone? Christopher asked. Yes, that's all he needed to know. Okay, good night. He turned sideways. Aren't we going to talk? She was in shock. Nothing. He kept staring at his phone. Okay. She got up and went to her daughter's house. It was frustrating to the point of tears. Why does everything have to be like this? She tries her best to make sure everything at home is good. And nobody appreciates it. Everything is taken for granted. Jenna was back at work this morning. Robert had texted her to say good morning. She smiled and replied to him. A correspondence started between them. It seemed to the girl that it distracted her a lot from everyday life. I will come tonight, wrote Robert on Friday. Good, she replied to him. Jenna knew her husband would be picking up her daughter from daycare, and she was going to Neil today anyway. So it was okay to ride for a couple hours. She waited for him at the gate. Robert pulled up. Jenna got into the car and said hello to him once again. Where are we going? The young man asked. I don't know. Maybe the same restaurant where we were the first time, she suggested. Well, he didn't care as long as with her they had already learned a lot about each other during the week-long correspondence. Now they had some common topics to talk about. How are you? Robert started with the usual question. Fine, Jenna shrugged. Nothing had changed in her life. I see. You don't want to talk. He looked at the girl. Order me some wine, she asked. Just like last time, Robert showed the waiter that he needed to come over. He did as the girl asked. They sat there, smiling at each other. Robert took Jenna's hand. Don't. She pulled it away. Why? I can see you're not feeling well, he said. What didn't she realize? Should we drop everything and change things for the better? He asked her. No. What are you, Christopher? She began to tell how they met, how they found out about the disease, and how she nursed him back to health. You're like Mother Teresa. He was serious. It's okay, Jenna said sadly. Yeah, I see they brought their order. Just like last time, it was delicious. Robert was saying something, telling about his work, making the girl laugh. It was nice to be with this man. It took her mind off everything that had been happening to her lately. Let's go to my place, asked Jenna Robert. No, she said firmly then. Where to? He didn't want to let her go. Home. Come on, I'll show you. She got up from the table. Great. He was glad Jenna wasn't going anywhere. Did the girl say where to go today? It was on the outskirts of town. When they were there, Robert marveled at how beautiful it was here. A highway followed by a field, and then the horizon. It all blended together. Do you realize why I brought you here? She asked. Yes, it's beautiful. He agreed with her. They just sat in the car and looked into the distance. Afterwards, Jenna asked him to drive her home. Robert turned to her, ran his hand over her cheek, leaned in, wanted to kiss her. No, she turned away. I don't understand why he was looking at someone he liked. I have a husband. I love him, the girl said. I see, sighed the young man. Let's go then. She waited for him to start the engine. You know, I can see you're not feeling well, he said softly. Robert, don't ruin the relationship we have, Jenna asked him. Okay, I'm sorry. He started the car and they drove off. I'm home. She went into the apartment. No one answered. Jenna walked over to her daughter, stroked her head, kissed her, asked if she was hungry. After Emily said that she and Daddy had eaten, Jenna headed into the other room where Christopher was lying on the couch again. He was with his tablet today. Is that okay? She asked. What are you talking about? He didn't understand. I'm at work all day and you haven't gone anywhere, the girl said. She looked at her husband and realized that there was a problem in their family and it had to be solved somehow. She didn't want to leave him because she loved something from me. Do you want to? He asked. I sat down to talk. Jenna leaned over to him and kissed him. Have you been drinking again? He heard the smell from her. Look, if things were good in my family, would I be doing this? She remembered how good things used to be. Are you trying to accuse me of something now? He turned around. No, she shook her head. Then what? He looked at her with one eye. Let's go to a psychologist, Jenna suggested. I don't need any psychologist. He sounded sure of it. I do. I was ashamed to admit it, but it was true. Well, go for it. It was obvious he didn't want to talk to Jenna anymore. She went into the kitchen. She wanted to cry, but she knew it wouldn't help her. The next day, when the girl came to work, she saw that there were flowers on the table. Who brought these? Was surprised Jenna. I don't know. The watchman brought them. He said, what's for you? The coworkers answered, okay, thanks. Nice. She took a photo and sent it to Robert. Your handiwork. She captioned the photo. What did you want to make you feel good in the morning? Moody, he told her. Thank you. Now she sent it to him. In the evening, he waited for her again. Why are you doing this? Apart from being friends, you and I can't be anything else. She said it with confidence. Let's go. I'll just drive you home. He opened the door for her. Jenna got in. They drove off. They didn't talk about anything today. When they got to the driveway, she wanted to get out, but Robert took her hand. Tell me, do you really love him or do you just feel sorry for him? He asked the girl. What kind of question is that? She put her foot out into the street, and her hand Robert held it that way. Answer, he waited. If you don't let go now, we won't socialize at all anymore, she told him. Sorry, he let her go, and Jenna walked quickly toward the entryway. At home, everything was the same. For a long time, nothing had changed at all. Almost every day, Robert would come over to Jenna's house, but she wouldn't let him do anything. She just hung out with him. It was relaxed and fun and interesting. Are you working again today? One day on his day off, Christopher came up to his wife. probably haven't called yet," Jenna said. Christopher came to her, hugged her. Jenna immediately remembered how tender he was and what they had before. "Maybe we could go out," she suggested. "No, I don't feel like going out." He spoke in her ear. "Why does it like this?" Jenna asked. "I don't know." He shrugged his shoulders. "Let's go on vacation. I'll buy the vouchers. We'll take a vacation without Emily," Jenna suggested again. "Good." Christopher was even happier. "Then I'll look for a vacation tomorrow," Jenna smiled. She turned and kissed Christopher. Tonight they slept together. Everything was fine. The next day, he wished his wife good morning and made coffee. "Thank you." She was home for the second day in a row in the last 6 months. No one had called her in to work. Jenna sat down at the computer to search for travel vouchers. She sat for a long time, choosing. Sometimes Christopher came up to her, asking questions, offering advice. When Jenna had everything done, all that was left was to pay. She did that. The flight was a week away. Now she had to talk to the principal about taking the short vacation. "Are you ready?" She had packed all her bags, Emily, taken to her mom's house, and was now ready for anything. She hadn't spoken to Robert in a week. He had won her over with texts and calls. But Jenna didn't want to pay attention to that. Sure enough, Christopher was smiling. The next day, the couple hailed a cab. They drove to the airport. In the car, Christopher held Jenna's hand, and afterward they took their bags and went to check in. Then a few hours on the airplane, and now they were almost near the sea. Their hotel stood near the sea itself. Now they were heading there. When they got into the room, they were amazed at the view from the window. On the first day, they went to the beach, but only to scout the situation. Everything was gorgeous. At first, Christopher went everywhere with Jenna, but after a couple days, he got carried away with his tablet again and didn't want to go anywhere. "Are you really not interested in anything?" Jenna asked him. "Why go out every day?" He didn't understand, but we could lie at home. They started fighting again. And what he didn't understand her grievances. Nothing, so Jenna turned around and walked away. "Where are you going?" Asked after Christopher. "To the sea. I want to be alone." And found. And cried again. Why does she always have to be alone? He's never around. Always, whatever difficulties or joys there were in life. The girl was alone with it all. It was at this point that Jenna decided to text Robert to say hi. She typed the message. "I thought you weren't going to write anymore," he replied after a second. "Sorry," she didn't know what else to write. "I totally understand." "When are you coming back?" he asked. "How do you know?" She was curious. "I was at your work. They said you were on vacation," Robert admitted. "I see." After a week, she didn't keep anything from him. "Can I hope to see you again?" Robert asked her. Probably yes. She wasn't sure, but for some reason she wanted to. "Good, then I look forward to your return," he wrote. "Great, bye." She wrote and looked out at the sea blue in the distance. It was so beautiful. Jenna relaxed a little. Right now she was wishing she had brought Emily with her. She would be running around here now. She would have loved it for sure. The rest of the week went well, but that was it for Jenna. Christopher went to the sea a couple more times and spent the rest of the time in the hotel on the bed. "We're flying home tomorrow. Let's at least spend tonight together," Jenna asked her husband. "Are we not together?" It became strange to him, as if yes, but as if not. She approached him. "Jenna, understand, I get tired quickly, and I just don't want to go anywhere." He took her hand. "I understand, but the sea air is good for you, especially for you." She leaned over and kissed him. "So it gets here, in the room." Christopher pointed to the open window. "Yes, but that's not it at all." She looked where he was pointing. Jenna finally managed to convince her husband to take her to the restaurant. He sat, ate, didn't talk about anything. Beautiful music came on. "Let's dance," Jenna called him. "No, it's not my thing." He said no. "Okay." Jenna realized she felt like crying again. They went home. The next day, they had to fly home. Jenna bought some souvenirs. The bags were packed. They were ready to go. The airplane was silent. In the car, too. They were finally home. I'll pick up Lee on the way. Wanted Jenna to see her friend and cry, but only she came out of the house. She spotted Robert's car and pulled up. "What are you doing here?" she asked him. "You don't know." He looked at her and smiled. I see she looked up at her windows. "And what do you understand?" He took her hand and pulled her to him. "Wait." She walked around the car and sat in the front seat. "And what next?" He was getting curious. "Let's go," she asked. Robert complied with her request. They drove off again where it had once been so beautiful. "Do you mind?" He turned to the girl. "No, not even in favor." She smiled. Why does she have such a good relationship with this man? Willing to do a lot of things for her, and the husband she loves so much is willing to do nothing. "Tell me." They stopped, and Robert turned to her. "What is there to tell? We've been on vacation for so many days, and he hasn't even left the room." Jenna said indignantly, "Let's go to my place." He touched her chin. "Let's go." She nodded no way. He quickly started the car. They drove off. On the way, Emily called her mom and told her that they were having problems with Christopher. "She's coming over tomorrow. And I warned you." Her mom reminded her of what she said before the wedding. "Oh, don't start, please," asked her daughter. "Okay, we'll wait for tomorrow," the woman said and hung up. "Is everything okay?" asked the man behind the wheel. "Yes," nodded Jenna. She had made up her mind today that she would go with him and try to build a completely different relationship, but she didn't know if she could do it or not. They arrived and went up to Robert's apartment. He immediately set up a table, got some wine, some appetizers. He took a beer from the fridge himself. "What were you getting ready?" It made the girl laugh. "No, but it was always there just in case." He smiled, opened his wine, filled his glass, then got himself a beer. "Thank you for your support." She toasted okay, and "Thank you for everything." He took a small sip. "For what?" She didn't understand. "For what you are." He reached for her, wanting to kiss her. Jenna was ready for it. She even closed her eyes. But then she pictured Christopher, remembered how much she loved him, and what they had. "No, I can't." She turned away and opened her eyes. "Here we go," Robert sighed. "I'm sorry, I can't." She stood up. "Where are you going?" The landlord didn't understand. "I have to go home." She went into the hallway. "Jenna, wait." He followed her. "No, I'm sorry for all the nerve. Is there something you're hoping for?" "But I love my husband, and I need to go home," she said. "All right." He didn't try to talk her out of it. Jenna left his apartment. She went home reluctantly. She knew there was nothing new waiting for her there, but she went anyway. She wanted to talk to her husband. Maybe now he would hear her and understand. What if she told him about Robert? Tell him a young man was hitting on her. I wonder what his reaction would be. She asked herself. Even though Robert had offered to drive her, she hadn't accepted. She needed to take a walk to think. At that moment, Mom texted. She told her to go to them if things were bad. Or maybe she really should go to her mom's. She stopped, but after that she waved her head and went home, even though she didn't really want to. I opened the door at home and she walked in, but when she turned around, I froze with surprise. There was nothing in the apartment. She could see that from the hallway. The TV, computer, laptop, all the appliances from the kitchen, anything of any value was missing. Jenna's first thought was that the apartment had been burglarized. She rushed to the wall, opened the closet where there was a jewelry box and money. What it was, she couldn't believe her eyes. The rings, earrings, and bracelets were there, but the money was missing. Clearly, if it had been thieves, they would have taken everything. But here she walked further, saw that there were no clothes in the closet, went to the nightstand. There were no papers either. She sat down on the couch and cried. Why did he do this to me? I never spared anything for him. I loved him. and he sobbed her to tears. Jenna dialed Christopher's number. He had blacklisted her. She tried to text him on social media. He blocked her there too. After that, the girl called her mom and told her everything. She went to the kitchen, opened the drawer where the medicine cabinet was. She took out a sedative and drank it. She noticed a piece of paper on the table, walked over, smirked. It was a letter from him. In it he wrote that he loved her and thanked her for everything she'd done for him. But he realized he needed to leave. Also talked about blocking her so she wouldn't push pity in return. Jenna grinned. There was a knock on the door. She went to open it. Standing on the doorstep was Robert. "What are you doing here?" She was stunned. "I realize that if I didn't catch up with you now, I'd lose you forever," he told her. "Robert, he's gone." She showed him the empty apartment. What a bastard. His fists clenched. That's enough. She led her guest into the kitchen. They sat down at the table. Jenna poured tea, showed Robert what the man she loved so much and was willing to die herself to save him had written to her. "I see." He read it. "Pack your bags." "I don't get it." She looked at him with red eyes. "Let's go to my place." He wasn't asking now, he was affirming. "I didn't even," she said. He walked up to her and started kissing her. It was so unexpected that Jenna responded. There would be no objection. He took the bag and started putting some of her things in it. "Let me do it." She took it from him. "Great," Robert said. Emily stopped in the hallway. "Jenna, just like you wanted, we'll pick her up tomorrow." He put his arm around her shoulders and led her outside. "You're walking." The girl was surprised. She'd never seen him without a car. "I had a beer," he reminded her. They came to his house. He poured her wine and sat her in an armchair. "Look, you need to calm down. I don't want things to work out between you and me. You can stay with me for a while. We'll pick up your daughter tomorrow, and I'll help you with everything." Now he's acting like Jenna with Christopher. "Thank you for everything." She clung to him from the soothing wine and tears. Jenna quickly boiled it down. Robert carried her to the bed, covered her with a plaid, and closed the door behind him. He really liked her and would do anything to make sure she reciprocated him. The next day, Jenna did not go to work. She said she had a family emergency. She went to her mom's house, who worked 2 and 2, and it was her day off. "Hi." She came into the apartment. "Hello," her mom hugged her. And Jenna started crying again. No need to shed tears, so it was meant to be. In fact, the woman was angry, but she couldn't say anything bad right now. Knew her daughter would still be on his side. They went into the kitchen. They sat there talking for a long time. "You know who helped me?" Jenna asked her mom. "No, of course not." She looked at her surprised. "I have an acquaintance whom I think it's today we'll meet," said the girl. "Just acquaintances," or her mother looked at her enigmatically. Mom just smiled for now. "Jenna, it makes me happy that you are smiling." They hugged each other again. In the evening, Jenna went to daycare, picked up her daughter, and together they drove to Robert's house. And then they went with him to Mom's to keep her informed. "Hello." Robert entered the apartment and gave the woman flowers. "Come in," she invited him in. When everyone met and sat down at the table, a casual conversation began. "You know how much I love your daughter, and if it were up to me, I'd propose to her today," Robert said. "But that's okay. Now they'll divorce, and go ahead." Green light. The woman smiled. Jenna was putting Emily to bed at that moment. She came back, only to hear the end of the conversation. "They married me without me." She smiled. "Come back, daughter. And I advise you not to ignore Robert. You can see at once that this is a good man," Mom began to say. "Calm down. My husband left me yesterday. And you're already giving me a new one," Jenna said sternly. "Why is he?" That hurt Robert. "Okay, don't fight. Time will sort things out," said the wise woman. "That's right." Today Robert said goodbye to Jenna, went home. The girl went back to work. She could not think about Simeon. As soon as she started to do so, Tears came to her eyes. Why do you need him? Forget it. Go and file for divorce. Colleagues used to say. Robert came every night. He met the girl, gave flowers, until he calmed down and made no attempts to get closer. A month passed. Jenna kept waiting to see if he would call or write, but Christopher never showed up. Under pressure from her mom and friends, she filed for divorce. In a month, she was to be a free woman. Emily suffered the most. She cried just like her mom when she found out her dad had left. Everything would be all right. Resolved Jenna that she would not cry anymore. Ino looked at her daughter and hugged her. They stayed at Jenna's mother's house for a while longer, but all the time it could not last. And at some point the girl asked Robert to take her home. He did everything she asked. He has the most beloved woman. A month later, her mom called, asked how she was doing. And then she said she was expecting her for a visit tonight. So give me the weekend. Jenna was surprised, because today was Wednesday. No, I need you to come today. Mother insisted. Okay. The girl didn't understand the urgency. She picked Emily up from daycare and drove to her mother's house. When she arrived, it was business as usual. Mom, what was the urgency, she wanted to know. Come in, she called her into the room. Wow. Jenna went there and saw a gorgeous table that was set and stood in the middle. Why are you surprised? Sat down on the table, the woman sat down. I don't know what kind of celebration she showed with her eyes at everything that was here. You'll find out soon enough. At that moment there was a knock on the door. Mother went to open it. On the threshold stood Robert. He was wearing a suit and carrying flowers. Jenna immediately understood everything. She smiled. Robert walked up to her, looked at the woman and the girl who were standing there. Jenna, will you be my wife? He held out a box to her. I don't even know. She looked at everyone. Mommy, say yes. Her daughter held up her finger. You'd think she was looking at the man across the table. You first before the answer, and then think as much as you want, spoke Robert. Okay, I'll do it. She was angry with paint and took the flowers and the box. You made the right choice. Kissed her. Robert kissed her. So now to the table. The mother was happy with the way things turned out. They sat and talked, and then Robert asked her to come with him. Emily, are you staying here? Her grandmother asked her. Yes, she nodded and looked at her mother. Don't you think it's going too fast? Jenna asked Robert when they were already outside. It's okay. I love you very much. He was bringing her over to his place. I can't tell you the same thing yet, the girl admitted. I don't have to yet, he smiled. Thank you. She pressed herself against him. Tonight, when they arrived at the man's apartment, he was finally able to kiss her. Jenna was smiling, and Robert could see that he could make her happy. I have to go to work tomorrow, she told him and looked at her watch. Stop thinking about it already. He kissed her again. And then the wedding preparations began. Robert wanted not just a wedding. He wanted a wedding, and the most beautiful one. For his beloved Robert dreamed of her becoming a princess. What are you thinking? Jenna saw that he was often pensive. Did he tell you the truth? And what did you have in mind? She began to wonder. Nothing. He winked at his future wife. Okay, it's always secrets. She was really happy. And now she couldn't think about the man who'd betrayed her. The day of the wedding had arrived. Jenna was wearing a beautiful dress. Next to her stood the groom. He was also very handsome. Guests, relatives, and friends congratulated. Everyone wished only happiness and great love. Daughter, don't doubt him. He'll be a great husband and father. Mommy, I'm happy for you, Emily said to her. Thank you, family. Jenna smiled and hugged them. And you dare to be unhappy? And stop reminiscing about the past, threatened the woman with a finger. Good, she nodded. They arrived home in the evening. It wasn't any easier with them today either. Are you really so perfect? Did the wife look at her husband? Naturally, she didn't. Waited this long to start bullying you now? He laughed. She pounded him in the chest with her fist. You have no idea how much I love you. He pulled her to him for the second time that evening. "Do I love you?" She spoke softly. "What? What did you say?" "Say it again." He looked at her. "I love you." She wasn't looking at him. "Jesus, Jenna, we're gonna be the happiest couple ever." Robert started kissing her. "Thank you." She closed her eyes, and it seemed like she was the happiest person on earth. "Can you promise me something?" he asked his wife. "Sure." She looked up at him. "Stop being strong. I'll do anything for you." He pushed her a little away from him and was now looking straight into her eyes. "I don't know how to do that." She remembered what she had done before. "But he'll learn, promise." Didn't let go of her hands. "I'll do my best." She nodded, but didn't take her eyes away. "Good. I believe you. You're my love forever. And I swear to you that you'll be like a stone wall behind me." He pulled her to him again. "Thank you." With one lip the girl said. She believed that happiness might be smiling upon her now.